Good morning. You know, we all love a good mic moment, so I don't want to keep you away from the courtroom, but I wanted to say good morning to everybody. Thank you for joining. There's only one issue. There's only one issue I think that Judge Matthews is going to go over because it seems like she denied the other ones yesterday. But let's get back to it. Hello, Mr. Cremo. Good to see you. There's Miss Karen. Teresa, hey babe. How are things in the ROMEO? The Leaning Tower of Pizza. Jesus. Shannon's there with bells on. Good morning, TTT. TTT Ma. Thank you for subscribing this morning. Not for this appeal, she's not. me see if I can update you guys really quick. Okay. Oh, there's Tate's dad. Tate Meyer's dad. Poor guy. Oakland County judge largely denied Jennifer's request for a new trial. Judge Matthews agreed to a hearing to determine if Crumbley could have an acquittal or a new trial based on her attorney's claims that Oakland County prosecutors conducted secret deals with 2 key witnesses. However, Matthew denied claims that only school officials were negligent in preventing the deadly shooting. 2 witnesses had proffer agreements but denied they were promised immunity. 2 witnesses had proffer agreements. Who the hell was that? Tell me it wasn't the freaking counselor. The Oakland County Prosecutor's Office acknowledged that the 2 witnesses had 2 proffer agreements, but denied that they were promised immunity, leniency, or favoritism for testifying. In addition to filing a motion for dismissal, Desi, her lawyer, also filed a motion seeking her release from prison, saying it was a smear campaign. So that's where we stand. Jennifer loves horses. Hey, did you guys catch the Fire Aid concert last night? Put a 1 in chat if you caught that. It was late. It was like middle of the night because it was California. Hey, Melissa B. Robat. Welcome, Jeep Babe. Thank you for joining this morning. Appreciate your support. I hope you enjoy your membership. We're waiting for Jennifer. Welcome in, Big T, Ange B, Schmicky, Sandra Bowman, welcome in. The only thing that Jennifer J asks is that you hit the like button.
I heard it blowing with like a G.
Here she comes. That dude looks like Mickey Steins. Wasn't her. Thank you for joining. Oh, I wonder what she looks like. Yeah. I didn't even think about that. Okay, so the motion is to her appeal for a new trial. So the proffer agreements were already decided on. She was moved from prison back to the Oakland County Jail for today's hearing. She was moved yesterday. So it says that Judge Matthews denied the new trial, including motions related to publicity. She will hear arguments today. Okay, so today's motion related to the proffer agreements and that prosecutors allegedly offered to 2 key witnesses during the trial. So we're going to hear about the witnesses that have the proffer agreements. Thank you, Teresa. A whole year. Thank you, honey. Thank you for reminding me. Teresa messaged me this morning, too. I've got all kinds of eyes out there, guys. Is it going to be, B-Fam, is it going to be Televised? Oh, Nicole, you don't like them? Well, I want to know who got the proffer agreement and why. Because the only witnesses they had were like school employees, right? Students. I mean, who else testified for the state? Come on in, guys. Good morning. You haven't missed anything yet. The jingle jangle hasn't been brought in yet. So she was already denied the new trial, I believe. Judge Matthews just went ahead and took care of that, I guess. The boyfriend? I don't know, Paul. I mean, they brought her all the way from prison for it, so I don't know. I have a feeling, too. Mickey, I'm with you, because who else could it be? Oh. The horse stable lady? Why would the horse stable lady, though, get a proffer? I think it's the school people, because they were at fault as well. I don't know. Who are they? Coming in hot from the back.
Coming in hot, just like the fajita.
Bye, Jennifer.
Hopkins and Ejac. Hey, Melmos. She's got different attorneys for the appeal, though. Shannon's there. Shannon, we saw her. Yeah, in Pine's words, a burrito. Shannon Smith is there.
What you are witnessing is real. The participants are not actors.
Good morning, Island. Good morning, everyone just joining. You haven't missed anything yet. We're waiting for Jennifer to be brought in. It said school. Okay. Thank you, UPOS. So this article from Fox 2 says an Oakland County judge is expected to make a decision Friday as Jennifer Crumbley, the Oxford High School shooter's mother, seeks a new trial. They were sentenced to 10 to 15 years in prison. Last month, Jennifer's attorney, Michael Desi, filed an appeal saying the trial was riddled with errors, including the prosecution not disclosing agreements with key witnesses, publicity. Here she is. And Jennifer being convicted for not controlling her minor son. Oh, she's got a braid. Wow. Holy cow. Thank you, Northern Beans. She's definitely got more chins than she had before she went in. Thank you, Beans, for the new memberships. Thank you, Aristocat. Welcome. Thank you for your support, you guys. Appreciate you. I got 5 of my own coming in hot just to match yours. Enjoy, guys. Welcome in, new members. Jen, I'm sorry that your cousins went through that. I'm from Romeo originally, so it hits close to home, this case. I hope they're doing okay. Welcome back, Miss Nightbot. Hi, Potato. Potato's on the treadmill this morning. Get it, girl? There's Shannon, far right. Is that her husband with her? Is that Shannon and her hubby? Oh my God. You guys see Shannon? She is a fit potato. You go, potato.
All rise. The court is now in session. The Honorable Cheryl Matthews presiding.
Good morning. You may be seated.
Sit down, bitch, sit down.
Angie B. You guys can.
Your Honor, calling People v. Jennifer Crumbley, case number 222799990 FH.
Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Mark Keith on behalf of the people.
Joseph Shada on behalf of the people.
Good morning, Your Honor. Michael Desi, P64530, appearing on behalf of defendant Jennifer Crumbley, who sits at counsel table to my left. Also, Your Honor, by way of introductions, I have 3 law students from the University of Detroit Mercy School of Law who have been assisting me as interns, and I'd like to introduce them. Jackson Moore, who will be assisting at counsel table with the court's permission.
Sure. So I should direct all my questions to him.
Please do. Please. I asked him if he wanted to take it this morning, and he said yes.
All right, good.
So Jackson Moore will be assisting, and then, of course, Paul Brochet, who's also going to be assisting me.
Good morning, Judge. Good to see you.
And then I also have my law student, Nick Priolo, who's also here from the University of Detroit Mercy School of Law, and then my paralegal, Beth Bentley.
Good morning.
Thank you, Aaron.
Good morning. Today's the date time set for defendant Jennifer Crumbley's motion for a judgment of acquittal, or in the alternative, a new trial. As you're well aware, I have read everything frontwards and backwards and all the cases that you cited. I've read the motion filed by the defense as well as the response by the prosecutor. The court also allowed for the defense to file a reply. The reply of the defense is partially responsive to the response that was filed by the prosecutor, but also contains allegations not supported by the original motion filed by the defense. The reply references a public relations firm allegedly hired by the prosecutor, as well as media outlets shadowing trial preparation at the prosecutor's office. Any argument about PR firms or alleged gag order violations aren't the subject of the motion filed and aren't relevant to the motion filed. Although these topics are undoubtedly of great interest to my long-term friends who are from the press and may have some future potential relevance, they do not help me decide this motion. Therefore, I don't want oral arguments on these topics. I am, however, very, very interested in hearing arguments about the proffer. All right, Mr. Desi?
Sure. Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, if I may, just before we begin, as a housekeeping matter, I would ask that if the court, with the court's indulgence, Mrs. Crumbley has a very serious medical condition, a substantial hernia that is quite large. It's hanging from her stomach. And I would ask, with the court's permission, that if the belly chains could be removed from her, because those are putting a lot of pressure on her midsection where that hernia is, and you can see it visibly from her body.
I don't have an issue with that. Several issues with regard to Mrs. Crumbley were raised with the court last night, and we tried to take care of those with the jail. In addition, the deputies approached me this morning. I've been in the courthouse 33 years, and none of these deputies tell me how to try a case, and I also don't tell them how to keep me safe. So I would ask if it's possible to make Mrs. Crumbley as comfortable as possible, and as well allow her to participate in her hearing today. I don't really know what that involves. I don't think anyone thinks Ms. Crumbley's going to make a run for it or anything like that. But I have to defer to the deputies. Can her belly chains come off?
Your Honor, I did speak with our jail director. I can't confirm nor deny whether their medical condition exists, nor can she. However, I will allow her belly chains to be removed for the sake that she does have this medical condition. However, the leg shackles will remain secure.
Thank you, Captain.
Thank you so much.
All right, we're going to ask them to do that.
Potato? them is honey buns, not a hernia, baby. Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. Welcome in, everybody.
Right.
Thank you for joining this morning.
Mr. Desi, the court is likely in agreement with you that there's been a discovery violation pursuant to MCR 6.201. I guess my real question is, what's the remedy?
Sure. All right. Well, if Your Honor is inclined to, if you're agreeing with my position.
Well, I said likely, you know.
Okay. Well, I guess what
my
I'm...
job's to have an open mind, right?
Sure. Well, the reason I'm asking is because the prosecution has made arguments that the proffer agreements were not cooperation agreements, did not confer any sort of immunity, and did not require or offer anything in exchange for these witnesses' testimony. I believe each of those assertions are false, and if the court would like, I would like to walk through the language of the proffer agreement to the extent that the court would like to hear that.
Sure. That's what I'm interested in. In the 9-page opinion we issued yesterday, I think we discarded some issues that we already felt strongly about after spending an incredible amount of time analyzing them. But I am concerned about the proffer.
Sure, I understand, and
I know it's not something that I've dealt with a lot before. So.
Sure. If we could put the screen up, I'd like to show the proffer agreements. That way it would be a little easier for me to walk through the language.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask Mr. Moore to put up Defendant's Exhibit A, which is one of the proffer agreements. And, Your Honor, just for the record, the two proffer agreements are identical, so it doesn't matter if we show one or the other. They're the same, all right? They have
First, Mr. Ejak and Mr. Hopkins.
That's correct, for the two school officials. So, all
Oh,
right, just
it
reading
was
from the prosecution's brief, this is their response brief on page 3. This is what the prosecution says. Nowhere is in the agreements is there a grant of immunity or other agreement for testimony. They say there's no consideration in exchange for testimony, and the prosecution also says that it is a gross mischaracterization of the proffer agreements to call them cooperation agreements. So let's just start first by looking at the proffer agreement, just so we can be clear about what the facts are. This is section 2 of the proffer agreement, and it clearly tells us that the purpose of the proffer agreement is to receive truthful information from your client, including information about possible criminal activity by your client and others, to evaluate your client's credibility as a source of information and potential witness. So as soon as the prosecution tells us that this proffer agreement has no effect and was not offered in exchange for any testimony, and it didn't even seek out testimony from them as witnesses, the proffer agreement directly contradicts that by virtue of the language that we can see right there in paragraph 2. So that would be the first thing I would say, is the proffer agreement makes clear that it is for the point of evaluating the testimony for these witnesses.
Whether or not they were going to call them as a witness.
Of course, yes.
So do you agree that they could have taken the stand? Mr. Ejek and Mr. Hopkins both could have taken the fifth.
Absolutely, Your Honor.
And violated the order.
They could. Well, yes. And more importantly, now we're jumping a little bit forward to the issue of materiality. But as to the materiality, which we'll get to, the prosecution could not have secured the assistance of these witnesses, period, without the proffer agreements, because these individuals, by their able-bodied counsels, sought out and negotiated these proffer agreements so that they could go in with some assurance or protection that whatever they said couldn't be used against them.
Use immunity?
Use immunity, that's exactly correct, Your Honor. If Mr. Moore can move down on this. So the prosecution has continued to say the agreement doesn't confer any sort of immunity. I mean, it is completely puzzling how they could make that assertion, because right here in 6A paragraph, it says this office will not offer any proffer statement made by you or your client in this office's case in chief in any criminal prosecution of your client. What does that mean? It means that those school officials who sat down with the prosecutor's office could say anything they wanted to in that room, knowing whatever they said could not be used against them at any later time. That is a grant of use immunity.
Only if it was true.
Only if it was true. You're correct, Your Honor. Only if it was true.
If they lied, that's wrong. Right?
That's correct. If they lied, then it doesn't. But the point I'm making is the prosecution has gone to great lengths to, in my opinion, gaslight us to tell us this isn't immunity. This is use immunity. I attached to my reply brief, Your Honor, a DOJ manual, a prosecution manual by the Department of Justice that describes in detail what these use immunity agreements are and proffer agreements. In federal court, we call them castigar letters with a K. In state court and federal court, we see them called proffer agreements. You've also heard them perhaps referred to as queen for a day letters. Okay, I don't know where that came from. I don't know who coined the phrase queen for a day.
I Googled it. Now I don't remember.
Well, I Googled gaslight, Your Honor. So I want to talk about...
It's a movie from
1944. That's correct. It was a movie from 1944, Your Honor. And in that movie, if I could, and I just please if you could indulge me for just a minute. In the movie, a husband married a woman who's had a famous aunt who had
Wait, that was a Betty Davis?
I don't think it was Betty Davis. The wife's name in the movie was Paula. But the man married Paula because her aunt had lost jewels, and he wanted to get the lost jewels. He was trying to find her lost jewels. So he married this woman, Paula, so he could try to figure out what happened to the aunt's lost jewels. After they got married, he was searching around the house, creeping around like a cat. He was in the attic and he was walking, and the wife said, "I'm hearing footsteps." He said, No, you don't hear anything, honey. You're making it up. Because he wanted to tell her, to convince her she was crazy and needed to be institutionalized. And then he dimmed the gas lights. He was dimming the gas lights and flickering the gas lights. And she said, "Honey, the lights, something's wrong with the lights." And he said, No, it's in your head. The point is, now the term gaslight, I don't think we heard it before about 3 years ago, like 2 years ago. But we hear it all the time now. So I did take the time to figure out what it meant. But it essentially stands for the idea that when someone's trying to tell you not to believe something that your eyes can see, they're gaslighting you. And that's what the prosecution is doing in this case by telling us that this agreement does not provide for use immunity. So why is it so important? Why do we care if this provides for immunity or not? Because MCR 6.201, if Mr. Moore could bring that up for a second. MCR 6.201, which is our discovery rule, which is the embodiment of the constitutional due process principles of both the Supreme Court's decision in Brady versus Maryland and Giglio. Those cases have decided that the prosecution has to turn over favorable evidence. So what happened? Perhaps the Michigan Supreme Court adopted this rule, MCR 6.201, that says upon request, the prosecuting attorney must provide each defendant, and then 5, any plea agreement, grant of immunity, or other agreement. So why is this important? Because we have now established that the proffer agreement, if you could go back to that, please. The proffer agreement provides for limited use immunity. So it is I don't even want to say it's my position. It's clear in the black letter of the rule that they had a duty to produce those proffer agreements upon request of counsel. Was there a request by counsel, Your Honor? Yes, there was. Mr. Jackson, could you put the request up, please?
This is like a law class.
They don't dispute there was a discovery request. They don't dispute that.
Well, I just want to make clear for the record how we link together the proffer agreement to use immunity to MCR 6.201 B5. So here is Ms. Shannon Smith's written formal discovery seeking all discovery pursuant to MCR 6.201. So what does that tell us? Where are we now? We know that they offered use immunity to these 2 witnesses. We know that there was a formal request for that discovery, and we know that the prosecution failed to produce those agreements either before or any time during the trial. They came out after, and that was due to, I guess, some public reporting by the Free Press. I believe it was Ms. Ballas' article who first disclosed the existence of the proffer agreement. So if we could go back to the proffer agreement, please. That's Exhibit A. So we now know that the proffer agreement actually provides for immunity. If we can move down to 7. It tells us how they can, the cross-examination and rebuttal of inconsistencies. This office may use your client's proffer statement in any proceeding to cross-examine your client. Why is that important? Again, because the prosecution is arguing that this proffer agreement did not provide for any assurances and that it didn't even contemplate that these school officials would testify as witnesses. That, Your Honor, respectfully, is gaslighting, because we can see what the proffer agreement says.
I don't think they said that.
Well, I respectfully disagree. They say right here, there's no promises of favorable consideration. Your client's not entitled to any consideration regarding the charges. It's a gross mischaracterization of the proffer agreements to call them cooperation agreements. They actually do say cooperation agreement. It says cooperation in here. And
it doesn't require them to testify. They could still have not testified.
That's correct.
They refused to testify.
That's
right?
correct. They could have not. But here's the point. Here's how they brought these witnesses to the table, to get them into court and to sit in that box to testify. But for the proffer agreements, those individuals could have asserted their Fifth Amendment, and as Your Honor knows, because you said it several times during the trial when there was a dispute about Ms. Crumbley's son testifying, and you told the defense, you're not going to put him up here so he can assert the Fifth Amendment, which is the law in Michigan and always has been, and of course Your Honor is aware of that because you already made that ruling. The same thing applies here. The prosecution couldn't have brought these witnesses in to testify if they were going to assert the Fifth Amendment. And they had every right to do so, especially considering the overt interest of their deficiencies and failures and whether those deficiencies and failures rose to the level of criminal liability. So if they would have asserted the...
You mean the Ejek and Hopkins?
Yes. If they would have asserted the Fifth Amendment, Your Honor, they wouldn't even have been here.
Right.
Okay? Mm-hmm. And without them, we wouldn't have had any of this testimony about this meeting, this key meeting that this whole case was about, a couple hours before the shooting started, the meeting at the school.
It's not that there would have been no testimony there would have been no testimony about what specifically was said at the meeting.
That's correct.
The meeting was 12 minutes long, so
Yep.
there's a video of Mr. and Mrs. Crumbley coming in. There are numerous texts and emails showing that Ms. Crumbley got the picture, that defendant James Crumbley got the picture, and Mrs. Crumbley showed the picture to someone she worked with. There's videotapes that show that Mr. and Mrs. Crumbley were at the school for a total of 12 minutes, and then they left without their son.
Sure.
Right? So
That's
there was
correct.
testimony about whether or not, from Ejak and Hopkins, about whether or not they were asked to take him home, whether or not there was a discussion about checking the backpack, anything like that, right?
It wouldn't have come in.
There would have been a hole in the testimony.
That's right.
But there would have been other testimony that supported the fact that the meeting happened, that the meeting was brought about by that disturbing picture, text back and forth from Mr. and Mrs. Crumbley to Mrs. Crumbley's friend. There was a lot of evidence surrounding that meeting.
There was, but, Your Honor, most importantly, the school officials offered testimony, very specific testimony about their subjective descriptions about Mrs. Crumbley's actions during the meeting. That could not have come from anywhere else, and that
I
is,
agree.
in my opinion, thank you, Your Honor. I like when judges say they agree with me.
I know, it really does something for you, doesn't it?
It really doesn't, only if at the end of the day it means something. But
I have read everything 1,000 times, believe me, and I can't unremember these trials.
I believe and understand you, Your Honor. But the point I'm making is, it's not cumulative. So, for instance, in the Cheryl case, the People versus Cheryl, the 2014 Michigan Supreme Court case.
That's the McDade, right? Cheryl, 495, Michigan 142.
That's correct.
So, assuming for the sake of argument, I haven't heard from the prosecutor yet today, assuming for the sake of argument that I agree with you that the prosecutor violated the rules of discovery, right?
Yeah.
I need to know what you say the remedy is.
Well,
I agree that credibility is always at issue. If I had $1 for every time I said that, I could retire right now. Credibility is always at issue, and it's clear that the statements of Mr. Ejak and Mr. Hopkins would potentially be used in charging decisions with regard to them. That's clear. But if you go further and read Cheryl, the difficulty is for the court to find there's a Brady violation, I would need to find not only that the prosecution suppressed the evidence and that it was favorable to the accused, but viewed in its totality, it's material, right?
Yep.
And it's material, it's exculpatory or impeaching.
that's correct. So, that's correct. I agree with that. But in the Cheryl case, let's just be clear about why the Cheryl case is not a good template to decide this issue. In Cheryl, the Michigan Supreme Court said that there was a suppression, there was a violation, but that it wasn't material. Why was it not material in Cheryl? Because that witness did not have any sort of cooperation or immunity agreement, and so that witness, there was no basis to attack that witness for bias or motive for what she was saying. I see you want to ask me a question.
Well, if you knew how many times I've read this, it would. Okay, so.
And it was also cumulative in Cheryl, and it's not cumulative here because they couldn't get those subjective descriptions from anywhere else except these two school officials.
Okay, but what part? What would be missing? That she came to the school and she left without Hopkins,
Yeah.
Mr. Hopkins and Mr. Ejak. You still have she came to the school, she left
Yeah.
the school. She
So
wasn't with her son. Obviously, no one searched the backpack. Everyone was very disturbed by that picture.
yeah.
And minutes later, right?
Yeah, so here's why it's
And
material.
minutes later, when the shooting starts,
Well, it's hours.
2 hours,
Yeah.
she doesn't think to herself, oh, I'm so worried about the safety of my son. That's not what she thinks.
Well, we don't know. That's what.
She says, Ethan, don't do it.
Well, that's after the fact. But I want to back up to the meeting because you asked me why is that testimony
Yikes.
so important and material. It's not just the time people arrived and that they left. Here's what they said. Okay, this is Mr. Ejak testifying that he had an expectation that they would be leaving from the meeting with their son. He said, it seems a little odd based on my experiences. So they were trying to lay a predicate that would satisfy the gross negligence standard that didn't come from anywhere else in the trial, because that meeting is where the prosecutors say Mrs. Crumbley should have done something or taken her son.
Okay, but how is the testimony? There's a difference between the credibility of the witness. I agree with you that the credibility of the witness is always an issue. And, so there would have been robust cross-examination by Ms. Smith, right? Mm-hmm. But the problem is the defense could attack the credibility of Mr. Hopkins or Mr. Ejek based on the proffer and the fact that they knew the proffers would be used in a charging decision, right? But the prosecutor says the problem with that is that the testimony of Mr. Hopkins and Mr. Ejek about the 12 minutes your client was at the school is consistent with what your client said happened in the meeting, and still would have been, even after robust cross-examination. In other words, that the jury didn't have to believe Mr. Hopkins or Mr. Ejek over your client to convict her. They could believe all three as well as the rest of the evidence and still convict.
I disagree with that, Your Honor, because the prosecution is essentially trying to put us in the box that says the only way we could have impeached those witnesses was with a prior inconsistent statement from the proffer. That's not my argument. That's not my position.
No, I get it. No, it's not a prior inconsistent statement.
I don't.
It's you went and talked to the prosecutor's office and you knew whatever you said could be potentially used in a charging decision, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I get it.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
But it affected their credibility as to these subjective descriptions about, well, it was odd to me. She was in a hurry. She just wanted to leave. She said she had to go to work. Those are all subjective.
She testified. She said, are we done here?
No, she testified, Your Honor. I'm sorry to respectfully, just to correct the court. Mrs. Crumbley testified that.
The transcript, by the way, I got this doorstop, but this is
that guy
report.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I gave you so much papers.
I can't with this.
Mrs. Crumbley testified, page 223 of her testimony. She was asked, did you mean to be abrupt about ending the meeting? I didn't think I was abrupt. Did you think you ended the meeting? I think it just automatically ended. So this is the dispute between those witnesses and Mrs. Crumbley. She couldn't refute.
That's not your brief. Your brief doesn't say.
It's right here.
That if we knew about the proffer, the testimony would have been vastly different.
Well, actually, to be honest, Your Honor, I think without the proffers, if they wouldn't have secured the proffers, if those witnesses would have asserted the Fifth Amendment and they hadn't testified at all, Mrs. Crumbley wouldn't even have needed to testify, because she wouldn't even have needed to try to rebut the subjective descriptions from the witnesses.
She wasn't called to rebut them.
Well, I disagree, Your Honor.
I think she was called to humanize her.
Well, perhaps, but there's a twin purpose of it, because Ms. Smith, trial counsel, certainly asked, well, did you mean to be abrupt? She says, I don't think I was abrupt. Why is that important?
Okay, but you're arguing that she couldn't have been convicted without Ejek and Hopkins.
Yeah, I believe she could not have been convicted without Ejek and Hopkins. That meeting was key. Let's not forget, the prosecution's theory is that Mrs. Crumbley should have and could have done something at that meeting, and so they portrayed that meeting in a certain light, which was she was uninterested, she was in a hurry, she had to get back to work, she didn't seem to, it was very odd to me. We had other meetings before, but this one was odd, this one was different. Those are subjective descriptions that they can't run from that, and how could the defense contest that? I don't believe Ms. Crumbley could have been convicted without the testimony of Ejek and Hopkins, because that meeting was the linchpin of the gross negligence insofar as the prosecution's theory was she should have done something then.
Okay, wasn't the linchpin of the conviction the fact that there was that picture, it was sent to her, there's things all over Facebook about the gun that he got for Christmas.
I don't disagree that some of those things.
Don't get caught looking for bullets on your phone.
Your Honor, I believe that those things in part could contribute, but we cannot now parse out after the fact the import of those two individuals' testimony juxtaposed against the other things that Your Honor is pointing out. So why would they have called those witnesses? What was the reason? Let's just think about it for a second. What was the reason for calling these witnesses to begin with? Because they could not establish the basis of what happened in that meeting in order to then say to the jury, she could have taken him at the meeting, she could have went and got counseling, and we already know, and Your Honor knows, they did not require the parents to take their son. They said, no, he can stay in school.
Okay, but how does that matter? Any parent could come and pick up your child at any time, right?
How does that matter? Well, because
you're
because ultimately the jury was being asked to decide, do you think...
taking him home regardless.
Sure, she could have, but they told her she didn't have to, and that there was the plan that he should be around his peers. So they made it optional. But this is where they tried to sway their testimony to help the prosecution, where they say, well, but we thought they would take him. Okay, so you either thought you would take him or you were going to require them to take him. Which one is it? And it's my argument, Your Honor, that the prosecution was unhappy with what some of the statements of those witnesses. So they got up on redirect to try to bolster them by saying, well, what did you think was going to happen? Well, I thought they were going to take him. It was my expectation. That's substantively different. So the reason they called him was because they wanted the jury to hear this moment in time, 2 hours before the shooting. They wanted to focus on what the Crumbleys could have done, and what they ended up saying was, well, we thought they should take him, and it was odd, and she ended it abruptly. She didn't hug her son. Did they hug her son? No, she didn't hug her son. Those are subjective descriptions that wouldn't have come in from anywhere else. The jury was left thinking, well, these two school officials are noble and selfless, and they're just here to tell us what happened, without knowing that they were under the threat of prosecution. Let's not forget, the prosecution...
They were still under the threat of prosecution.
Sure.
Part of the problem is, in your brief, is you assume that, or think that if Mr. Ejak and Mr. Hopkins were charged, then that exculpates your client. All four of them could have been charged. Yeah. In theory.
Sure.
In theory.
Sure. And a jury also could have said, well, if these guys are facing criminal prosecution, then we should be thinking more about what their failures were, and maybe it wasn't that she was grossly negligent. They didn't know that. So back to my point, the school officials could come in and look noble and say, oh, we're just doing this. And, Your Honor, just to remind the court, the prosecutor announced the day after James's verdict that they wouldn't charge the school officials. So why is that important? Because they dangled that carrot over those witnesses to get them to cooperate and to come in.
They were probably never going to charge them.
I agree. I agree they were never. I agree they were never going to charge them, but they had to keep that in place until after the trial. They had to keep that threat of prosecution in place until after the second trial, and they obtained their guilty verdict.
Sit up, lawyer.
You don't like that?
You don't like that?
Well,
that's the fuck is this?
If this isn't materiality, I don't know what could be materiality. And the Cheryl case, the suppressed video statement, the suppressed witness statements, as the Supreme Court said, a couple of things that are markedly distinguishable from this case, Your Honor. One, they said it was cumulative. This isn't cumulative, as I've already described to the court. What they said about their subjective descriptions was not cumulative of anything else. That's number one. So it wasn't cumulative. Number two, in the Cheryl case, they said, well, there were only minor inconsistencies, nothing substantial between the statements of the witness and the recorded statements that were not produced. So fine, they had marginal value. As Your Honor said, well, their proffer statements weren't really inconsistent. I agree with that. The proffer statements weren't inconsistent, but that only assumes the only way to impeach the witness is by a prior inconsistent statement. That's simply not true. You can also impeach the witness by motive and bias, and that's what the purpose was.
I agree.
So let's not accept the idea that if the proffer statements themselves were not inconsistent with the trial testimony, there's nothing to be done here. That's false. That is an incorrect assumption, because it has nothing to say about the actual motive and bias of those witnesses, which was absent in the Cheryl case because that witness didn't have any proffer agreement or cooperation agreement.
All right, what else?
What else? They wouldn't have testified without the proffers. So back to the point.
Okay, but
and then they wouldn't have had that description, the damaging testimony. She was in a hurry. She didn't care. She wanted to get to work.
They have a video.
but not of what was said. We don't have a video of those. Those were subjective descriptions. It couldn't have come from anywhere else, except the 2 witnesses.
What specifically? That's a very small part of the evidence presented.
Oh, I don't think
what
it's...
happened that day.
Well, but that's the key evidence. It's the last interaction between the parents and the school officials and the son.
Why is that the key evidence?
Because when they argued...
She goes to the school and she leaves the school. Her and Mr. Crumbley.
Because they said it seemed a little odd based on my experience. That's page 45 of EJAC's testimony. Okay. Typically, he says, he's trying to help the prosecution. Typically, parents follow the direction. He says, I did think it was strange they didn't take their son out. That's page 71. The expectation, my expectation was that he would be leaving with his parents. Those are all subjective descriptions that only could have come from those witnesses. That your Honors, your point is, well, we know what time they got there. We know what time he left. Sure, we know there was a meeting.
We know what happened before that, and we know what happened after that.
But the prosecution's theory was, in closing, they were at the meeting and they could have taken these steps at that time, but they weren't interested. They were in a hurry. She wanted to go back to work.
Okay, but
so
they don't need EJAC and Hopkins for that.
I think they do. Because, how could they make that argument and say she was in a hurry, she wanted to go back to work, without their testimony?
Well, she obviously did not tell them that they gave him a gun for Christmas, and that it was all over Facebook, and that she had heard about the bullets the day before, and that there was that horrendous picture, right? That picture that should be disturbing to any parent that was sent to her. She was so disturbed by it, she showed it to someone she worked with, right? And then she goes there, and did EJAC and Hopkins check the backpack? No. But she didn't check the backpack either, right? She didn't check the backpack either.
Well, as we know from at least the Guidepost report, the Guidepost investigation found that they should have checked the backpack.
Don't be hurt when I tell you we didn't read it.
I won't be hurt because
it's not relevant to
it is 560 pages.
It's not relevant to these proceedings. And sadly, I know most of what's in there.
It may not be relevant per se, other than to show the context that these individuals were facing. If the parents were grossly negligent, then the school officials could have been grossly negligent, and the jury could have decided where they wanted to place that amount of blame, whether to reach guilty on the gross negligence.
It's like a comparative negligence civil theory or something.
No, Your Honor, it's
okay. Do you think that you were going to tell the jury, okay, these 3 all messed up, pick one?
The standard is beyond reasonable doubt, Your Honor. I don't need to tell you that. I know you know. That's all they needed to do was create some doubt, and they shored up any doubt that may have existed by virtue of bringing in those 2 schools. I feel like what I'm hearing from the court is that this meeting was inconsequential, and I'm reading this.
It wasn't inconsequential, but you're telling me that if there wasn't testimony about what happened at the meeting, or if their credibility was in doubt, which it would have been, their credibility would have been in doubt based on this property. You're telling me that if all that happened in the meeting was not presented to the jury, your client wouldn't have been convicted. That's what you're telling me, and I think that's a big leap.
Well, hold on, Your Honor. Let's back up. The Cheryl case in the Michigan Supreme Court, they made clear, I don't have to prove to you that we would have won an acquittal. I only have to prove there's a reasonable probability that the outcome could have been different. And then Justice McCormick goes on to write what that means. And it means that there's a lack of confidence now, because looking back, we have to say, and Your Honor's pointing out this. Fine, that's fine. We have all these things. But how can you take out that damning testimony from those 2 individuals, their subjective damning testimony about what they say, oh, she's in a hurry, this was odd, this was unlike other meetings. That's damaging testimony. So you might already say, well, you had 8 other pieces of evidence, and you're telling me, Mr. Desi, you want to remove the 2 pieces, but isn't 8 enough? No, it's not a sufficiency of the evidence standard.
Whether it undermines the confidence of the outcome.
It absolutely undermines the confidence of the outcome, because they could not have received that testimony of that nature from anybody other than those school officials. But this is, and I've said it a few times, and you're probably going to tell me to stop saying it, these were subjective these were highly subjective descriptions of what they believed was Mrs. Crumbley's mindset. And that is what the jury heard, with it being unchallenged by the fact that they were highly incentivized to say that to help the prosecution. And as we know, soon as they
were highly incentivized to not get charged, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, we all know how this works. When you have an situation like this, these witnesses are going to do what they need to do. They're going to say, oh, I think they want me to be a little bit more helpful. I think they want me to establish this fact a little better. So
I'm back to, there's no evidence contradicting what they said, and your client's testimony matches what they said.
I don't agree it matches, because...
Well, you didn't tell me you agreed with it match.
Well, I'm telling you right now, it's on page 220.
I don't have the transcript of the trial. It's in my brain permanently, but
I have it if you like it. Your Honor, my brief was 35 pages long. The court roll's only 20 pages. I mean, can I tell you something? My brief was actually closer to 45 pages at first.
It wasn't a brief.
Yeah, it's a
What is
oxymoron,
happening?
isn't it? I'm not looking for praise for my brief. What I'm telling you is, this, now that we're drilled down on this issue of how it could have been contested, right here, Mrs. Crumbley's testimony on page 223, she disputes in principle and in character the testimony that she ended the meeting abruptly. Well, that's important. The jury says, oh, she didn't care. She just wanted to get out of there. She was in a hurry. That's damaging testimony. And if they didn't have any of that testimony from that meeting, then we're left with, he saw something 8 months earlier, and Mrs. Crumbley explained that and said, look, we tell jokes and stuff about this and goes. So the jury could have said, yeah, we believe that part, but now that we understand that these school officials are under the threat of prosecution, we're thinking very seriously about whether to accept their subjective descriptions about what occurred. It's that simple. I mean, this is materiality. If ever there was materiality, this is it. The Cheryl case isn't even come close to the facts in this case, because it was minor inconsistencies, it was cumulative, and there was no agreement by which to challenge the witness as being biased or having a motive.
There's other cases that say similar, right? There's other cases
that say similar
about materiality.
Oh, sure. There's more cases than we probably even need on the law books about materiality, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Right? If you want, we'll file all of them.
I wrote them.
Well, then you've done more reading than me, because I can't say that I've read them all. You asked me when we started about the remedy.
Is there a remedy if it's not a Brady violation?
Well, just before we get to that, if I could, please. I would ask the court to consider People versus Mumford. This is on page 9 of my motion, Court of Appeals case from 1990. It is axiomatic that the credibility of a witness is an issue of the utmost importance. It is also axiomatic that evidence of a witness's bias or interest in a case is highly relevant to his credibility.
I agree with that.
And that's the controlling standard. So it is impossible to say that these two witnesses' subjective descriptions were cumulative. It's not cumulative. It didn't come from anywhere else. So I would ask the court to view that testimony and what happened through the lens of what the Court of Appeals said in the Mumford case, number one. But back to your question now about the remedy. The remedy I'm asking for, Your Honor, is an acquittal. And I have a case cited in my brief. That's the Causey case. It is an unpublished decision from the Michigan Court of Appeals.
Do you really think I'm going to do that?
No.
Oh my God.
But I want you to, because I think you should. What? And I think the most important reason why I think that you should is because the violation of the discovery rule in this case was intentional. This wasn't an oversight. In Cheryl, it was an oversight, Your Honor, right? You agree?
There's other cases. There's a case that talks about a constitutional violation should be viewed by the quality of the evidence, not by something about the character of the prosecutor.
Well, you did say you've read more cases than me, so maybe that's why I didn't read. But can I just make a point about this my request for the dismissal? The remedies generally under Brady generally as a new trial. But in Michigan, we have the specific rule, MCR 6.201, which also provides that the court can take any action just to correct.
Oh, I found it.
Yeah.
If the suppression of evidence results in constitutional error, it's because of the character of the evidence, not the character of the prosecutor.
Bring it on.
Oh, I'm not. I haven't said anything. You've told me I can't talk about the character of the prosecutor. I haven't talked anything about the character of the prosecutor.
You said they intentionally violated the discovery rule. That's what
But this is why I was making the distinction between MCR 6.201 and the federal cases about Brady.
Okay.
Because in Michigan, Your Honor, Brady and Giglio set the floor as to what the constitutional floor of rights is, okay? Brady was decided in 1963, and it has been the law in the land since that date that the prosecution has to turn over favorable evidence. Michigan can decide that they want to offer greater protections than what Brady offers. So that's
why they get rid of Lester.
Huh? That's right. That's exactly right. That's why they get rid of Lester.
Oh my God.
Your Honor, it's almost so much fun that we're debating these cases. I
don't think so.
You don't?
Fun?
Okay.
Wow.
That's why they overruled Lester. The point is the Michigan courts can always decide to offer greater protections than those offered under the federal case law for Brady and Giglio, which I believe that was what you were reading from. Isn't it?
I think it is from Giglio.
Ah, see?
Do you want
So
me to
that
find it?
proves my point, Judge. You're reading from the
It's from Cheryl.
Oh, shoot. Well,
I can't.
either way, we're back to, I'm not challenging the character of the prosecutor as much as I'm trying to explain that this was intentional and it wasn't an oversight. And Cheryl, the detective, was on the stand and he said, oh, wait, the defense doesn't have these videos? I thought they had the videos. So that was an unintentional or inadvertent suppression.
Okay, but what case says that?
What case is what?
I've had plenty of cases.
What case is what?
Actually, in the past year, 2 different cases where the prosecutor inadvertently did not provide some evidence. One was ballistics. Guess what? Brady violation. It's over. There isn't a case that says intentional or unintentional, right? If
No,
there is,
but
I'd like to know what it is.
okay, but in Michigan, in the Causey case that you don't like,
I don't like it. Why?
well, you said you don't think I'm going to do that, do you? In Causey, they said that you could do it. In Causey, they said that dismissal is an available remedy.
Oh, you said acquittal. I mean, I guess it's the same.
I think it's the same. So in Causey, the court said that if you're going to consider it, if you're going to consider a dismissal, we have to consider certain factors, and these are listed on page 5 of my brief that is not brief, as you've indicated. And starting with People versus Al Hiswani, I won't go through these, but there's a number of factors that the court has to consider whether it wants to grant as to the appropriate remedy. If Your Honor doesn't accept the notion that a dismissal...
It's unpublished, right?
Yeah, it's unpublished.
And non-binding.
Yeah, you're right about that. We're all going to agree on that too, Your Honor. It's one thing before we leave here, that will be something we agree on. But these cases, and Leo is also cited in my brief, People versus Leo on page 6, same thing. These cases make clear, People versus Clark also, these cases make clear that the court should balance a number of factors when determining what the appropriate remedy is for a discovery violation, and Causey makes clear that the court can do so independent of whether it finds a Brady violation. Causey says, you know what, we don't have to concern ourselves with finding a technical violation of Brady because in Michigan law we can rely on MCR 6.201 to offer an additional remedy above the floor that's offered by Brady and Giglio. You like it? You don't like it?
I'm gonna read it more thoroughly.
Okay. Would you like to hear anything else from me about the materiality and the proffer agreements?
At the moment, if I think of it, I'll let you know.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Oh my God, Judge Matthews.
Oh, and you never did grant my motion to exceed that 20-page limit, although you told me my brief was...
I stopped reading it.
Oh, my. Well,
Oh my God.
But if we could, just for housekeeping purposes, at some point make clear that the motion Been accepted.
Mr. Pease.
Judge, there were so many fundamental misstatements of law and fact there.
Okay.
I'm going to need some time to reply. I will answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Do you concede that there was a discovery then?
No, absolutely not. And I want to start off with a few things. And I'd call it gaslighting just now, but this isn't a game, Judge. It's not a game, okay? Number one, the prosecuting attorney made it clear as early as February of 2022 that the evidence that she had reviewed did not support charges of either Nick, Ejack, or Sean Hopkins. As early as February 22. Number two, we can't go back in time to manufacture a new defense when one is not supported by either facts or evidence. I'll get to that later, Judge. Number three, those witnesses were subpoenaed to court. They didn't show up because of a proffer agreement. They were subpoenaed. And the plain language of the proffer agreement supports that.
But you didn't say that they had to testify, but they could have still taken the fifth, right? Yeah.
Any witness can attempt to take the fifth for any reason, Judge. Any witness can. There's nothing regarding the proffer agreements that indicates that the only reason they showed up at court was because of that.
Okay, but why didn't the prosecution provide that information? Maybe we wouldn't be here. I'm positive that decision wasn't an offhand decision by an APA or a Bates stamping.
I want to read the rest of the court rule that counsel didn't read through. And that's 6.201B5, the entire sentence, Judge.
Yeah.
Any plea agreement, grant of immunity, or other agreement for testimony. Testimony.
Comma.
There was no grant of immunity, Judge.
It's not use immunity?
It is not, Judge. The only way to grant immunity is to petition the court for immunity. It's to contain a verified statement to what these witnesses could be immune from. And the statutes on immunity, that's 767.A7 and 780.701, specify that. They also specify that immunity is regarding testimony. There was no agreement for testimony. I want to give the court a little bit of background.
There was an agreement not to use it in a case in chief if they were charged, right?
Anything they said in that meeting, yes. Yes, Judge. No agreement for testimony, no discussion of testimony. I want to go through the background of that, Judge. First, I want to talk about...
I'm going to let you say everything you want to say.
Thank you, Judge. Jennifer Crumbley was convicted based upon her level of gross negligence because she was the cause of these 4 deaths and because what her son did was reasonably foreseeable to her. Nobody else heard, Judge. That's why she was convicted. Now, the defendant claims...
Well, that's what the Court of Appeals talked about.
Yes, Judge. But she wasn't charged or convicted based upon anything that Hopkins
They're
or
so
EJ
rude
did.
over there.
Okay, I want to go through the uncontested evidence, and that underscores that point. On November the 30th of 2021, and I'll be brief.
Well, I hate to interrupt you, but I'm sorry. Okay, so you've skipped to the Brady violation.
No, I haven't. I'm still in discovery.
Okay, well, I have a quote for you.
Should I continue, or would you like to ask a question?
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Because you said you didn't violate the discovery rules.
Correct.
Right? And this quote stood out to me. Unless indeed the adversary system of prosecution is to descend to a gladiatorial level unmitigated by any prosecutorial obligation for the sake of the truth, the government simply cannot avoid responsibility for knowing when the suppression of evidence has come to portend such an effect on trial's outcome as to destroy confidence in its result. This means naturally that a prosecutor anxious about tacking too close to the wind will disclose a favorable piece of evidence. Didn't the prosecutor tack too close to the wind?
No, and I'll tell you why, Judge.
All right, good.
This prosecution was not premised upon either Crumbley or school liability. That is fundamentally false, Judge. And defense counsel...
I'm talking about a discovery violation.
Yes, Judge. It's part and parcel of that, okay?
But you're telling me why Ejack Hopkins, Mr. and Mrs. Crumbley could have all been charged and all had their own level of culpability. That's what that goes to materiality.
Evelyn, that's horrible.
Is the prosecutor allowed to take off the white hat for you in 1 minute?
The prosecutor should follow the law, Judge, and that's what we did.
Yeah.
That's what we did. The plain language law. That's Sanford v. State from 2020. That's a Michigan Supreme Court case.
Yeah.
For testimony, that's a trailing modifier that applies equally to all 3 phrases, Judge. There was no immunity. That's the statute. No immunity, Judge. And nothing was offered for testimony. Now, again, I want to go through some uncontested facts. I want to talk about the background of how those proffers came to be. November the 30th of 21, the defendant's son committed the deadliest mass shooting in school shooting in Michigan history, where he killed Hannah St. Juliana, Madison Baldwin, Tate Muir, and Justin Schilling. He used the gun given to him as an early Christmas present and the ammunition the defendant bought for it just a few days before. The defendant's son's only friend that this defendant had ever seen around was taken from him a month before the shooting, and she knew that. The defendant knew her son's proficiency with that firearm. In fact, he showed her how to use it just a few days before the shooting. The day before the shooting, she was called by the school and told that her son was looking up ammunition in school. That's November 29th. November 30th, the day of the shooting, she was called to the school, which all agreed took a great degree of concern, and shown that math worksheet where her son wrote the words, "The world is dead, help, my life is useless." He drew an identical handgun to the gun given to him just a few days before, a picture of a body with a bullet hole and blood.
See?
When she was shown that picture, her words, that she talked about her son was distraught the night before, her words, she said she was very concerned. At the meeting, she was given a list of mental health resources, told to contact that day. She didn't. In that meeting, she only confirmed information that either Hopkins or EJAC gave her. She didn't add any information. She didn't hug or attempt to hug her son. She didn't take him home. All agreed that there was never, you need to take your son home right now. You're forced to take your son home. Everybody agreed to that, Judge. That was never in dispute.
Well, Mr. Desi said they went on to testify that they thought it was strange.
Their subjective thoughts and views of that meeting have zero bearing on this case, Judge. Zero bearing. She didn't go home after the meeting to look for the gun. She knew that he couldn't be home alone that day. In fact, she texted her friend just that. And when news of the shooting broke, she knew it was him. Judge, that little snapshot is what is uncontested from November the 30th, that meeting, uncontested from those 12 minutes. Not just proven at trial with the evidence, because that would include a whole lot more. That would include the fact that that firearm was left unsecured and he had unfettered access to it. That would include the fact that she was adamantly aware of her son's deteriorating mental crisis that had occurred some months before. Those facts were proven at trial. But we're talking about just the meeting and what's not in dispute. Because the fact of the matter is that the majority of this case came through text messages, Facebook returns, GPS pings, phone tower records, and surveillance video. That's the bulk of the case. That what happened in that meeting, not in dispute at all. This is not a case of mistaken identity where witnesses had an incentive to identify a shooter as opposed to somebody else, like in Cheryl. This is not that case, Judge. The fact of the sheer volume of uncontested evidence underscores that fact. So I want to talk about the proffer agreements themselves.
Do you agree that at the time of the proffer, Mr. EJAC and Mr. Hopkins were subject to potential criminal prosecution and knew it? They were incentivized.
No, I don't agree with that, Judge. I don't agree with that. No.
You don't think they knew?
They could. I don't know what was in their minds, and it doesn't matter. That's the point. There was intense.
If you had gone in there that day, wouldn't you have thought, geez, I could be subject to criminal prosecution?
I think even Mr. Hopkins testified he wished everything went different. He was the only one to testify that he wished that day had gone differently, Judge, and would have done something differently. Now, the fact of the matter is, after the shooting, in the wake of the shooting, there was intense media speculation, locally, nationally, and internationally, whether anybody in that school would be charged. Some of those individuals were afraid, Judge, I'm sure of it. That's why they retained attorneys. And our job before the preliminary examination is try to meet with everybody we can in those 30 days from the time of the shooting to the time where we had to charge our case and start to organize our proofs. That included individuals at the school. Two of those individuals who retained attorneys, their attorneys reached out to us. And although they were adamant whether their clients wished to cooperate and sit down and speak with us, for the attorney's own sake, they requested the first meeting to be in a proper setting, and we agreed. There was no promise. There was no threat. There was no discussion about testimony. We talked about what they did, what happened November the 30th. And that was entirely consistent with what they told the police on November 30th, 2021.
Wait, let me ask you that because I think I sent an email to both sides. I was a little confused. So the video of EJAC during the proper statement was not provided. But there was an initial police investigation.
Correct.
And the police talked to EJAC, Mr. EJAC and Mr. Hopkins initially, and a police report was generated, correct?
Yes, they were interviewed November 30th, 2021. Right. That was recorded by the police. Okay. Narrative reports from the sheriff's office were generated regarding those.
Okay, and then when the proffer happened, who interviewed them? Did that end up being a police report?
Exactly,
No, it
Kels.
was our office, Judge.
And you just talked to them.
Correct.
Were the police there?
No. I want to talk about that Nick Ejak statement. I will in just a second.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So, there was never any agreement or promise for testimony. It plainly does not fit the court rule. And again, that's Sanford v. State. And we'll skip to this part in a second. But even if you were to find that violation, you would still need to find prejudice, which some of the questions you were asking the defense counsel.
Well, don't you think that credibility is always at issue and the defendant is not allowed to cross-examine about the circumstances surrounding the proffer? Doesn't that limit the information the jury may have about the credibility of the witness?
Their credibility didn't matter, Judge. It didn't matter what Sean Hopkins or Nick Ejak did or said. What matters is that Jennifer Crumbley knew all of this. She had 15 years experience with her son, and she got him a gun, and she knew it was unsecured, and she didn't tell anybody. That's not in dispute. And I have gone through that transcript, Judge, and there is no material dispute between Jennifer Crumbley, Sean Hopkins, or Nick Ejak in that meeting.
There's a disconnect. You keep talking about materiality, which is really important, and I'm back on 6.201. Isn't the prosecutor under duty to disclose any information that would affect the credibility of the witness?
6.201, we're talking about the proffer statements themselves. They don't meet that definition, Judge. They don't meet that definition.
All right.
And I don't agree with the point that these proffer statements would affect the credibility of the witnesses. I don't agree with that, Judge. I want to talk about that statement from Nick Ejak. This underscores the point that it was not for testimony. We didn't call him at preliminary examination. In fact, we hadn't intended...
You didn't call Ejak.
Correct. We didn't intend to call him at all until defense counsel put Nick Ejak on her witness list in December of 2023 and indicated that she was going to call him. We decided we were better off to put him on in our case in chief as opposed to cross-examination. When we made that determination, we should have gone back through the case file and noted that interview, instead of work product, is now discovery. Because that now would have met 6.201. Because that would be a statement by a witness, Judge, under the 1999 Court of Appeals case. I forget the name right now. We should have done that.
Ejak wasn't on your original witness list?
He was on the arrest just that witness list. We didn't intend to call him at trial.
Okay. All right.
We didn't need him. We didn't need him in an exam, Judge. Again, because the bulk of what happened on November the 30th at the meeting was uncontested. But before this court even find a discovery violation, this court must find prejudice. And that's where we come back to this faulty misconception that this case was positioned as either Crumbley or the school for liability. The fact of the matter is, any line of questioning, any cross-examination of these witnesses to highlight their own perceived or real culpability would only serve to highlight the negligence on Jennifer Crumbley. Because all agreed what was conveyed to her on that
Lindsay,
meeting.
good
all
morning.
Agreed.
Good morning,
all agreed
Christina.
what she did not convey back to those officials.
Yeah, but Mr. Desi, you put a black little line, you can read people's minds. Mr. Desi is sitting there thinking, well, we wouldn't even have called her then. Right? Because you're saying that her testimony confirmed what Mr. Hopkins and Mr. Ejak said. But Mr. Desi would say that Ms. Smith potentially would not have called Mrs. Crumbley if they did.
The bulk of the uncontested evidence doesn't come from her testimony. She spoke to police as well, Judge. These officers, or these individuals spoke to police as well. They testified, they were sued civilly. They testified at civil depositions. Defense counsel trial had that. In fact, she used those questions during cross-examination, and they testified later on at trial. They were consistent all along the way. The uncontested evidence doesn't come from her testimony alone, Judge.
I forgot about the civil depositions. When were they chronologically?
After exam, before trial. I couldn't tell you the date.
Okay.
But we know with certainty that counsel had those because she referred to a page of the deposition
Thanks,
during
Kels.
cross-examination.
Welcome, guys. Enjoy your memberships, and thank you to
Judge, there
Kels.
can be no I disagree fundamentally with counsel. This is not cumulative evidence. There can be no prejudice, especially the Nick Ejak statement. It only supports the prosecution theory. It only bolsters it, Judge. There's no inconsistencies there. Now, when we get to Brady, is when we talk about favorability and materiality, because the court is correct. Before a Brady violation is found, you need to show that this evidence is either impeaching or exculpatory, and that a materiality is the reasonable probability that the evidence, had it been disclosed, would result in a different outcome. That is not here. That is not the case here, Judge. There can be no showing of materiality.
A different outcome is the confidence in the outcome.
Can you say that again?
I don't know. When we were talking about these cases, this case, like it's not my job to say, oh, I think the jury verdict would have been different. Like that's not my job, right? But my job is to say, do we now lack confidence about the verdict?
Right.
It's a different thing, right?
The standard is reasonable probability that had the evidence been disclosed to defense, the result of the proceeding would have been different. Kyle's talks about, in essence, is this a verdict worthy of confidence? I agree with that. It absolutely is, Judge. Again, this has never been the case. Our prosecution never hinged upon any perceived or real liability on behalf of Sean Hopkins and Nikki Jack. Should they be successfully sued or successfully prosecuted at some point in the future, that would have zero impact on Jennifer Crumbley's convictions, because she was convicted based upon what she didn't tell anybody, what she knew, what she didn't do. The level of uncontested evidence there, that's what speaks volumes, that's what shows and underscores the level of confidence in this verdict. Does the judge have any further questions on this topic?
Not at this exact moment. I'm going to let Mr. Desmond respond.
Oh, Lord.
I'm going to let you respond. I'm going to let everybody say whatever they want. In the end, one side or the other won't be happy that they won't say it and listen. So
that's fine, Judge. Thank you, Judge.
Mr. Desmond?
Your Honor, just a brief detour from the substance of this. I would be remiss if I also didn't tell the court I have a third law student who isn't here, and I forgot to mention her, and it's important to me that I want to tell you that I also have a third student by the name of Stefania Ilievska, who's also assisted and been working on the case. She's not here today, and she couldn't be here, but I don't want that to be unsaid. So with that, Your Honor, I'd skip back to getting into what Mr. Keith said. You know, he just said, well, we didn't even need EJAC, we were going to call him. Well, then why did you call him? I'll tell you why. Because, well,
Smith was going to call him.
Well, we're adversaries, so I don't have to accept his assertion as to why he called him or didn't call him.
Well, it would make sense because it was chronology, because Mr. Hopkins talked about what happened in the office, and then Mr. EJAC came down, so
you're not
chronologically...
You're not gonna like what I'm gonna say, but they called him because they wanted him to say that it seemed a little odd. Typically, parents follow the direction. They called him to get those subjective descriptions that they could then use as the basis for gross negligence.
Look at his hand.
So, you know, the prosecution
what happened?
is just being absolutely recalcitrant about even acknowledging what MCR 6.201 says, even though we talked about gaslighting and what the husband was trying to do with his wife. They're still saying it's not an immunity agreement. Well, then they don't understand what a use immunity is. If that's the case, respectfully, they're just telling us not to believe something we can see with our own eyes. The subjective testimony is the key, and I know you said you read everything. I don't want to get caught up in my papers, but Mr. Hopkins also provided a wealth of subjective testimony. He had concerns of suicide. That was on, of course, you already know that. I don't have to tell you. He didn't want him left alone. He wanted him to be seen as soon as possible. I wasn't expecting them not to follow through, page 138 of Mr. Hopkins. Why am I telling you this? Because this is subjective testimony that went to the core of gross negligence. But here's my other real dispute with the prosecution and what they're arguing. They're arguing that there's sufficient evidence notwithstanding. That is not the standard. Materiality is not a standard of sufficiency of the evidence. Sufficiency of the evidence just says, well, there's other stuff that would support the conviction. That's not what we're doing here.
Well, that's about
There's Shannon in the left side.
Goes to whether or not you have confidence in the result, but it also goes to whether or not there's a difference between credibility and impeaching of the testimony. So they also say that
sure.
Other other evidence provided in the trial supports what Mr. Ejek and Mr. Hopkins said?
Well, yes and no, because the prosecutor also said, oh, there was this, there was this, there was this, there was all of these other things. So what he's suggesting to you is you should find that there was sufficient evidence to support the conviction. And there's just, there's case law. I know I stopped at 35 pages. I told you I already edited out about 10 pages. But I had a lot of case law in there about this exact point, and I took it out because I didn't think we were going to fight about it, I shouldn't say fight. We're not fighting. We're debating the issue of it. But there's lots of case law that says materiality is not dependent on a sufficiency of the evidence. And it's back to what Your Honor said with Cheryl. We have to ask, can we have confidence in this verdict, not given the fact that they withheld and suppressed this information? I understand why the prosecutor wants to tell you they didn't have to give the agreements, because it's so obvious the materiality is met in this case. So they're going to go back to square one and say, well, we didn't have to give the agreements. We don't think we needed to provide them under 6.21. We're not going to go back through it because we can read it for our own eyes. So I would suggest that the materiality in this instance is easily demonstrated. I don't even think it's a close call because there was no other testimony about that meeting. And don't forget, the prosecutor stood up in the closing and they mentioned all the things about what they believe Mrs. Crumbley could have and should have done and how she was despondent or disinterested during the meeting. So obviously it was important to them because they elevated it to the point of putting it in their closing argument. I'm sorry I've wandered around. My colleague, Mr. Brochet, told me to stop. I teach and I move all around the classroom all the time, so I can't help myself. He told me to stop, though, Judge, just so you know.
This guy's a clown.
Right. If you have any other questions for me, I'm happy to answer them, but I believe that we've...
I don't think I do.
All right.
I mean, anything else, prosecutor?
Just very briefly, I'll keep it very brief. You've been very patient. I appreciate that, Judge. Now, I just want to, again, hit the point that Sean Hopkins or Nick Ejak's perception of what is odd is simply meaningless, Judge, simply meaningless. Jennifer Crumbley knew the background. Jennifer Crumbley knew what that drawing meant. Jennifer Crumbley had the opportunity to take her son home. She chose not to. Jennifer Crumbley should have gone home and looked for the gun. She should have looked in the backpack. She should have put the pieces together. The objective, uncontested evidence is why this verdict is worthy of confidence, Judge. And regarding the proffer statement, again, I just want the court to follow the plain language of the law. That is the law in the state of Michigan. Sanford v. State. For testimony is the operative phrase. There wasn't like there was some roundtable discussion to hide evidence, Judge. It didn't fit the definition, and we never revisited it because it just doesn't fit the definition of disclosure. Okay? I don't want there to be any sort of allegation of malfeasance on behalf of the prosecution. And I know the court already indicated that, but I want that to be abundantly clear. Thank you, Judge.
Redneck.
All right, anything else?
Not from the people.
Well, you told me I can't talk about the other things I wanted to talk about, so...
Because it doesn't have anything to do with today.
Well,
it might be of interest in the future.
Oh, Lord.
The prosecutor, for one thing, the prosecutor wasn't in your brief initially, and the prosecutor wasn't permitted to respond. And I don't know how hiring someone to field questions from the press or PR or any kind of press videotape could impact the decision with regard to the motion that you filed. I'm not saying it might be relevant in the future. I don't know that. But I guess I would say that your job, Mr. Desi, as you know, is to represent your client, persuade me that her position is consistent with the law, and I guess what I'm saying is that information about a PR firm or media coverage won't help me, as I believe it's irrelevant to the current motion.
Right?
Just for the record, I just want to point, it's not a PR firm, okay? Again, fundamental misconception, not a PR firm.
I mean, they were social media influencers, Your Honor.
Oh.
Social media influencers. And their own websites say, they tell us in their own words.
The
come
county
on.
hired this.
You guys just can't help it, right?
Oh, my God.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, my God. She does so well handling him.
Talk to the press about it outside. I'm sure I know they're very interested in it. I don't think it helps me resolve the motion, so it's not up to me. All
Thank
right?
you, Judge.
So with regard to the defendant's motion for bond pending appeal, A ruling on this motion is obviously impactful. Therefore, a rule on the motion for bond pending appeal contemporaneous with a written opinion on the motion for acquittal and or new trial.
All right, fair.
Thank you, Judge.
Right?
Would you be bringing us back then for any?
I haven't decided yet. That's all I could do to get to this point, Mr. Bessie.
I cut my brief down, Your Honor, as much as I could.
All right. So,
What a clown.
I would like to ask that everyone remain seated while the defendant is removed from the courtroom. All right?
Helen, right? Not for the victims, though. Oh, here comes the belly chain.
I'm just off the record. Will the court cancel her writ?
Cancel her writ. Oh, yeah, she'll be sent back right away.
Okay.
Maybe today. Maybe today.
She going back to prison today.
Ms. Williams says it takes 1 to 2 days.
Understood.
But I suspect they will do it quickly.
Oh, they stopped. They didn't even wait until she left the courtroom? Oh, never mind. They're back. You were cracking up last night, Lucid?
All rise. Court is dismissed.
The cameraman. We'll wait till it's shut off. They're so crazy. That was wild, guys. Whoa. I got some screenshots to show you. So what do you guys think? Do you think the judge will end up denying all that? My ears are ringing. That was like loud background noise. She's in Ypsilanti. So I was looking for the time of Jennifer's hearing yesterday, and I came across this post. You guys are going to crack up. This is from Shannon Smith, and she says, Jennifer Crumbley's hearing on her motion for new trial is officially set for January 31st at 9 o'clock. Today, her appeal attorney, Michael Desi, filed a reply brief outlining a number of issues with the prosecution that have been discovered since trial. In addition to the secret agreements, the prosecutors did not disclose before or during Jennifer's trial. Now, those of y'all that have been here for a long time, you know my ex-co-host from 2018. Y'all, look at this. Look who replied. Look who replied. The critical K. Praying for Jennifer as well as the families. It's time to end the nightmare for her and let her grieve and get on with her life. That is just proof that crazy never changes. Crazy never changes. There's only one. I thought there was one in on 26 Mile too, Teresa. You see that? Yeah, she is whacked. Whacked. Of course. Right? I thought that was funny. Well, guys, I guess we wait to see what the judge decides, but I think it's going to be a denial across the board. What do you guys think? Hey, Paul, I want to thank you for joining. What's going on with your nephew? Is there any updates? Because it's almost February tomorrow. Of course you do, Granny. Granny sympathizes with the parents. Now, why do you sympathize with the parents? They didn't pay attention to their son. They bought him a gun when they knew he was mentally disturbed. He was killing baby birds at home. He was writing journal entries where he wanted to go rape and kill a classmate. If your kid was killing baby birds, I think you'd know. All right, hold up. Let's bring Granny up. Let's see what the fuck she's got to say. Let me give you a link, Grans. Granny Pants. Let's bring the Granny Pants up. Ooh, there is an awful high-pitched sound outside. Hold on. Let's get this up, and we're going to bring Granny up. She feels bad for the crumbs. Okay, here we go. Don't make me come. Bruh. All right, come on up. Of course. I mean, we all have opinions, right? It's always agree to disagree. We don't do that. Bruh. Granny agrees with Critical K. We have a problem. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I am interested to hear why you sympathize with them. Yeah, it's over. It's over. The judge is going to read over things and decide. February 24th. Yes, I am going to cover your nephew's trial. Yes. So it's February 24th. Let me write that down. Is that like jury selection, February 24th? Cremo trial. Now, you guys may or may not know that Paul Cremo is the uncle. I don't remember what they called the incident, but what was that? 4th of July, Paul? Yes, I definitely want to cover it. Are you going to it, Paul? Are you testifying? I don't remember. So do you guys remember the shooting in Chicago? It was 4th of July. What was it, 2022? You're not going. So are you going to be here watching with us? And how is his dad doing? Here, hang. Here's Granny.
Well, hello.
Well, hello there.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You know, I was just about to go have a productive day.
Oh.
I was like, you know what? I just got done scrubbing the kitchen floors. I did the dishes. I'm like, let me move into the laundry. And then this is a better way to spend it. So thank you for the invite up.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm curious why you sympathize with the Crumbleys.
So I haven't followed it as closely, right? So like I don't know about the dead birds and but I did know that they purchased him the gun and all of that. But I look at it this way. And I fluctuate on it. So it's like this isn't, I'm not set in stone on this. There's days I feel bad and there's days where I'm like, well, maybe if we start holding parents accountable, these type of things will stop happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if my daughter snuck out in the middle of the night and stole my car and she, ran into like a parade, am I going to be held accountable for that? Like we're opening up a precedent that I don't think we should open up.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of, I understand the aspect of, he had a diary and he wrote this and he had mental health issues. Well, a few years ago, my daughter struggled really bad with, ideations. And it took me over 6 months to get her to a psychiatrist just to be told it'll take X amount of more months. And I did the whole inpatient. I done all of it.
Mm-hmm.
That there just is not enough mental health for our children out there. It's not as swift and easy as people think it is to get your children mental health.
No, I agree.
Help.
I agree. And there's a very, if you want to get them into a psychiatrist, there's a very long waiting list. So if you get a call from your kid's school, right, and they say, hey, he's got to get into a counselor and you don't have one yet and you call, it's going to be a minute, right? Because they can't get you right in because like you said, there's not enough of them.
They even put her at high alert, and she still had to wait 6 months.
Wow.
for initial
See, that is a
appointment.
problem. That is a problem. But the
Right.
problem with the Crumbleys was that they didn't do any of these proactive things you're saying you did. You know what I
Do
mean?
we know that they did at all? Like they didn't even try?
No, they didn't do anything. They literally turned a blind eye to it. She was out getting drunk. He was at home alone probably a majority of the time. She was getting drunk, riding her horse. She was having an affair, having sex.
She disconnected.
She totally disconnected, right? And her marriage was bad. So Ethan would text her while she was not home, and he would be like, I'm hearing things, I'm seeing things, there's somebody in here. Can you come home? And she would just ignore him. So there was a lot of negligence to where they just, she turned a blind eye to it. And then to keep him quiet because he wanted a gun, they got him a gun and took him to the shooting range. Well, where they failed, in my opinion, was when they came home from that gun range, she left the gun in the car, unlocked. She blamed it on her husband. I told him to bring it in. Well, she locked Ethan out of the house that night because they got into an argument about his grades. When he was locked out, he got the gun out of the car, went in the shed and made a video about what he was going to do the next day. And
did they know? Did she know about the video
at the time?
Before sending him to school?
At the time, no. Mm-mm.
See, because here's part of what it is for me too, right? Like, all right, so obviously mom was having issues, and we see this. We see this right here on YouTube. We see parents that are extremely neglectful, and they just give their kids whatever to silence them.
Right.
Just kind of spoil them with like, here's all these things that don't matter instead of time spent, right? So we see that all the time. But then it's also at the same time like, all right, so he's saying he's hearing things and whatever. Is it a ghost? You know what I mean? Like, what do you think? There's a ghost? Like, I get it. He's afraid. How old was he? 15?
15.
So, and it also comes down to, is it one of those things like where you realize your kid's weird or like disconnected, but how weird and disconnected? Can anybody predict? And I say this a lot when it comes to Leilani, when it comes to her her mom. Nobody expects that their child's going to do the worst.
Dr. Malmo has a point. Had they taken Ethan to the ER for an eval, he would have been admitted to a psych unit. He was threatening himself and others. Now, I think where it comes down to is the day of, right? So the day of, he puts that gun in his backpack and he goes to school. So he's in class and he's drawing disturbing shit. Like the gun, blood, bullets, people, like a girl with a ponytail, right? Shot in the head, like all this stuff. And the teacher sends him down to the counselor. And the counselor's like, you would think this is where I have a problem. Because as a guidance counselor, if you have a kid come to your office, right, and he's drawing pictures of a gun, wouldn't your first question be, Ethan, do you have access? Like, do you have a gun at home? That would have been my first.
I wouldn't even ask him. I would have immediately, I would have them go into his locker.
Well,
as I'm speaking to him, the principal should have been looking into his locker.
Well, get this. He had the gun in his backpack. It was at his feet in the counselor's office. The counselor never asked to see it. Now, at the very least, had the counselor said, do you have any other drawings like this? And he got out his journal, they would have seen a lot more. But they didn't even look, right? So then the Crumbleys come in and they're like, well, we're not taking him home. He's staying, whatever. He goes back to class. On his way back to class, he goes in the bathroom, starts shooting.
Right.
So it was like this breakdown. The Crumbleys didn't say, hey, he's drawing this gun and bullets. Shit, we have a gun at home.
Right. No, I agree. But it's also it's an area where a lot of people have guns. So what are the odds that they didn't have a gun at home? And also, am I correct that this was around the same time as COVID? Because I'm seeing people say about the ER. Do you know I sat in ER? I did exactly that as a mother after spending a week sitting by my daughter's bed to make sure she didn't take her life, took the door off, all the things.
Right, but you were monitoring your daughter. He's out in the shed killing baby birds, right?
Well, and she wasn't. It was herself, not others.
It was before COVID.
There's a difference there. But my thing is, I did go to the ER, and we stayed in the ER for 4 days. 4 days. They had a teenager sitting in the ER with me waiting for a program, and the only program they had available was where a bunch of delinquents were. It wasn't even a place that would have been, suitable for her. It would have been more for him, put somebody like Ethan in there.
Right.
But somebody like my daughter would have been in more danger going
Right.
to
It
a
would have
place
been
like
worse
that.
for her.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It would have been worse.
I see. And I think that's the problem is that it's like
This
so
was
extreme.
post-COVID.
Like it was before COVID, wasn't it?
People are saying I think it was post. I think it was 2021, if I'm not
Oh,
mistaken.
you're right. It
COVID
was
2020.
after. So I do think that played a
Because
factor in his mental health being at
and
home.
the parents were wearing masks during trials. That's what made me even think of the COVID. So at that point, these kids they were isolated. That caused, I don't know about any of you, but that caused a huge damage in my children. Matter of fact, in myself, I feel like years just disappeared. Like, does anybody really remember the years of COVID?
Oh yeah. I just talked to my son about this last night. And it's
It's weird. It's
amazing
like
how
time just erased.
it really did. It's weird.
It is weird, and I think that messed up a lot of kids even further. Um,
It did.
and listen, I'm not totally excusing them. Like, I do agree that they were very neglectful parents, right? Here's a mother who probably couldn't stand her own kid. He was probably a weird kid. She didn't like him. She didn't like the father anymore. She found a whole new family. She had a hobby, not family, had a affair going on. She found new interests and she neglected her family. That happens all the time, unfortunately. It does. Does it always result in a child going and shooting up a school? No. But at what point does the whole society as a whole hold an accountability to this? At what point does the school what are they held accountable? I mean, what kind of counselor says, "Oh, you don't want to take your kid home? Fine, they can stay." They're easily as accountable.
Oh, I agree. No, I think the school officials are accountable. However, we have this like double-edged sword, right? Where we're like, it's not the school's job to raise our kids, right?
Right.
There's
No,
like a
it is
fine
their
line
job
there.
to
But
protect them.
as a school counselor, I feel like that dude had no common sense. And that's why he was given a
Right.
proffer to testify so he couldn't get frickin' prosecuted. But the parents ultimately are responsible for their children, right? They had one child. He had one kid,
Right.
and if you went in his room, they would have seen all this stuff. Like it wasn't hidden per se. You know what I mean? They just didn't check. When his room got so messy, they moved him into the spare room. I mean, this is how lazy of parenting they were, Oh, his room's out of
Right.
control. He can just move into the next room, mess that one up. I mean, it's just,
But my other thing is they prosecuted as Ethan as an adult. So how do you get to prosecute him as an adult but still hold the liability on his parents?
yeah. I mean, that was
Like
that was a
just I
special
just
circumstance. But you know what did happen too, Granny, is they did pass a law in Michigan that you have to have your guns locked up, right? If you have minors. So, I mean, I think that should be
That's
procedure
good.
across the board, I mean,
Yeah.
but they left it in the car. They were neglectful. They left it where he could easily grab it. And I guess that's that. 10 to 15 years. It's kind of
Yeah,
scary. I
just
mean, as a parent of a teenager, I'm sure it is a little unsettling, right? To hear that.
Yeah. I don't feel like they should get as much time as they should get. Matter of fact, I think the time that they did serve, even before trial, should be, sufficient enough. But it's, that I mean, that's just some days I feel like that. So other days I'm like, you people are neglectful. Your kids took other kids' lives because of your negligence. Hold them accountable. But then are we going to go back and get every parent of a school shooter? Because obviously they show signs too.
Well,
So
they
at
are
what point, like
charging.
that girl,
Well, they are charging the guy in Georgia, the school shooter that happened in Georgia. They are charging the dad because the kid got the gun from him.
mm. Remember yeah, I know that one actually. But the girl that was recent female that did it, and she was wearing the Columbine shooter shirts and everything.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, we never heard
Like
much
do her
about that,
parents.
did we?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, that one's weird. Yeah, I can't even tell you what happened. Is it because she's deceased?
I don't know.
Maybe because she's deceased. I don't know. It shouldn't matter, right?
It shouldn't matter because just because she's deceased doesn't change the fact that they were neglectful, that there were signs that they didn't follow up on. I mean, she has a whole foot trail of being, against men. She hated men.
Well, and furthermore, I mean, what do you think of this? Like, when the Crumbley parents were in the meeting with the counselor, don't you think that they should have, like, they all should have, like, said, look through his backpack, because his journal was in there, right? Where he had like this plan to sneak out of his house at night, go to this
Right.
girl's house that he went to school with, kidnap her, hide her in his basement, rape her, and kill her. He wrote it all out.
Mm.
And no one saw this because no one had the common sense when he was making these drawings to look for any more. It's maddening because it could have been prevented. And I think that's the point. Like, we need to look at this and say, how the fuck could this have been prevented? And I'm with you. He was at school, and the school should have been more proactive about it. Not checking his bag in his locker is ludicrous.
I agree.
It's
I
fucking
think it's,
maddening.
and not immediately sending him to an inpatient psych ward is also ludicrous. The school has the ability to fast line any of that.
Right, and they gave
They
him
could have
time.
at that moment.
Mhm.
Right. They could have called the police. They could have had him 50, what do they call it here? 502, 503, whatever. And they could have had him in an inpatient place facility that morning.
Right.
All the parents, all the adults failed because none of them wanted to do what they needed to do.
All of them.
And that's part of society's problem right now. Everybody's so self-centered, so busy, and so worried about discipline and this whole fucking gentle parenting thing and shit. Get the fuck out of here.
Right.
There's little monsters amongst us, and it's because people aren't allowed to parent anymore.
Right. And
They're-
you know, if
you
they
know-
like someone just said, Anid said, if the school would have called the or Dr. Malmo, if the school would have called the resource officer who should have been called in, because what the fuck happened is zero tolerance, right? They always say, oh, zero tolerance. If you're drawing a picture of a gun, anything weapon is zero tolerance, right? Even if you're drawing it, any of that stuff. Are you there?
No, I agree. I absolutely agree.
Isn't
I mean,
it?
there were so
don't
many
they say that
signs.
like zero tolerance still?
Yeah, zero tolerance, but then they also have that no child left behind bullshit. So it's kind of,
Right. Failed by everybody, and that's the thing. Like, if the parents are shitty, then usually the school should pick up on it, or you know what I mean?
right. But the school did. The school knew there were other signs and they didn't do anything about it either.
I know. It's very
I
sad.
just,
It's just,
I just wonder if this is opening a door, because here's the other thing, right? Thank goodness they didn't have other kids. Okay. But what if they did? What if Ethan had a 5-year-old innocent sister at home or a newborn baby brother at home? Those kids are now in the foster system. Those kids are now without their parents. Why? Because their big brother made a disgusting decision that day.
right.
I mean, at what point, it's a tough one.
But Dr. Malmo, the school did call the parents, but why did the school allow him to stay? They thought he was
Right. There shouldn't have
suicidal.
been a choice.
Right. That's where they fucked up. Your kid cannot come back until he gets into counseling. You know what I mean? The counselor
Yeah.
said he was surprised the parents refused to take him. Well, then you force them. You
Right.
have
You don't give them a damn
you have
choice.
500 other kids to protect. You keep that kid out of school until he gets appropriate help.
I agree.
I mean, I don't know, man. It's just maddening. It's maddening. But I get what you're saying about setting the stage. But I do think that the school counselor should be reprimanded in some way. Like, he is definitely accountable for not being a fucking counselor. I mean, his testimony was pitiful. Pitiful. I know you haven't seen all of it, Granny, but it was like, I just wanted to smack him. Completely useless. Like, he was just a warm body in the seat in the counseling office. And he failed him too. I don't give a shit what anybody says.
That's what I mean. There's many people that failed this kid along the way. And I get it. I mean, he's 15, and like I said, they sentenced him as an adult. So obviously they believe that he had the mental being to be, sentenced as an adult. But then yet you want to hold the adults in his life accountable for his actions. It's just,
kind of
I
an
don't know.
oxymoron, right?
Right.
Well, that's why Ethan is now, I think he's going to appeal his sentence too. That's coming up. But he is a disturbed little kid. He was actually causing problems the whole time he was in juvie too, or in jail. Sorry. They held him in the Oakland County jail and he was causing problems. So that was like you said, They didn't want him in the juvenile home because he was so fucking disturbed. The kids in the juvenile home are in there for minor things like having pot or skipping school or,
Right.
shit like that. And they're like, no, we can't have this kid around them. So he's held in the jail and he's being an asshole in there. And I think he's been an asshole in prison since he got moved.
Well, and that's the thing, right? So he was an asshole in school as well. And yet nobody intervened because we have that No Child Left Behind. It's just something has to give.
I wonder when his hearing is. I don't know when that is. I know. I agree. It's a horrible situation, but how do we stop
And then
this
to
shit?
top it off, we're going to pay for Ethan to spend the rest of his life in jail. So that's house and feed. And, now we're paying for his parents to do the same thing. So it's just, I just,
Right.
I don't know. I think we need to bring back some good old, it's obvious jail's not to reform like they claim it to be.
No.
Most people that go to jail for a significant time don't even know how to interact in the real world when they come out. What are we just going to keep building more jails and keep holding, everybody accountable for everybody's actions? And
I mean, imagine being 15 and being incarcerated for the rest of your life. That kid is just going to, we're going to watch him deteriorate in the system. Literally. He is in the process of appealing. That's what I thought.
And don't you think, like, maybe even them, like, all right, so they're neglectful parents, they don't pay them much attention, whatever. Maybe them, and poor choice, especially in hindsight, but maybe them going to the shooting range with them and getting him that gun was a way to try to bond and hopefully release some of that built up anger and tension he had. Maybe they thought they were doing the opposite. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that I think it was to keep him happy because, like, the video of them at the shooting range, she didn't even know how to shoot. He was teaching her, right? She didn't even really look like she wanted to be there. I think it was just to keep him content, if you will. You know what I mean? You know how some parents just give in and do things to keep the kid from, being up their ass, so they leave him alone. That's kind of what was going on in the Crumbley's house.
But do you think that him having access to the gun equates to manslaughter?
Second degree. I think it was I agree with the jury in this case. I think it set a precedent, but I think that precedent needs to be set because what else is working? Nothing. Right?
Nothing.
Maybe
but
if
it
more
also is not
parents
gonna,
start locking up their guns, we can prevent a school shooting or two. Maybe not
or
all of
maybe
them.
if the government made, stricter gun laws too.
They'll never do it. That's the problem.
Right.
I had someone in here from the UK. I think it was the UK or, some European country last night. And they said, or maybe it was today. They said, I don't understand why the U.S. won't entertain any kind of gun control.
Because it's a moneymaker.
It's wild.
Because they're paying off. At one point, and not to get political, and I hope it doesn't, but at one point, Trump was all about it. We're going to make change laws, blah, blah, blah. And then he got a hefty donation and was like, all of a sudden, no, I don't think guns are really the issue.
Mm-hmm. It's all political.
So it's like, it's all political. And if you think about it, the government benefits off of all of it. I'm sorry to say that, but it's fucking true.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the government gets paid to house Ethan. They get paid to house his parents. Again, if thank goodness he didn't have any siblings, but they would be in CPS custody. They'd be in state custody. We need real changes. And that doesn't come by trying to sell me a book bag that is gun-proof, bulletproof for the small price of $300 and some dollars.
That's crazy. Is that what they're doing?
Oh yeah, there's like school bags and stuff, and
Wow.
yeah, it's ridiculous.
Do your kids' schools have metal detectors?
No, and you know what? The day that they have to, you know what I mean? Like, should our kids have to feel like they're walking through a jail to go learn? Is that really the answer either?
I know. What is the answer?
I that's what I mean. They need, well, first off, they need to stop shutting down these mental health facilities. They need to make the last thing they need to do is take away medical for low income families, because that's where most of the issues lie. And if you take away that medical insurance, then they have no way in hell of affording therapy. And because there's not enough places that accept that medical state insurance, they're overwhelmed with, and they can't even take new patients. The whole system's flawed. And we're seeing more school shootings than ever.
Another thing too, Granny, is that he was 15 and they bought him the gun as a gift. And a 15-year-old can't legally have a gun. So that was part of the problem too.
Right. That I understand.
But I do agree
completely.
the mental health is where all of this begins, right? If it wasn't such a rigmarole to get mental health help, you wouldn't have so many people not doing it, right? If it was easier, if it was more accessible, if it was affordable, right? That's a huge fucking problem.
It's just, yeah.
Now
I
we
mean,
got
there's a lot of problems.
teenagers, going to prison for life. It's wild to me. It's all wild to me. And then we have Paul Cremo in chat. His nephew is the one that shot up the 4th of July parade in Chicago a few years ago. He's fixing to go on trial. Yeah, and Paul watched the whole Crumbley trial with us. He's here right now. He's going to be
I'm
here.
sorry for what your family experienced, Paul.
Dude, I know. I know it. It's crazy.
Now, how would Paul feel if his nephew's parents were held accountable for that?
Well, his dad was. So Paul's brother was arrested, which is Robert Sr., right? I think did he take a plea deal, Paul? Can't remember. Tell us what he was charged with. We do love Paul. I can't remember what your brother was charged with, but it was nothing like second degree manslaughter or whatever. I'm waiting for him to reply. That was crazy, though. I mean, you never know. 7 counts of reckless conduct his brother was charged with.
Wow.
And I think he killed 7 people in that shooting.
Well, let me ask you this, right? So, if we're going to hold parents, like I said, this is opening a doorway. If we're going to hold parents accountable for this, what about these little assholes that are in gangs out here committing gang violence? Are the parents held accountable for that? Are we going to start locking parents up for everything?
Hold on. He was charged with, holy shit, he was charged with 7 felony counts, and then he pled down to 7 counts of reckless conduct. They originally charged him with 7 felonies. Was Robert a minor? I thought Robert was an adult. I think he got in trouble because he bought the gun or something. It's wild. Go ahead, Granny. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. I just think, in Philadelphia and Detroit and all these places, there's a high gang association, right? Matter of fact, right where I live, there's this little gang of 14, 15, 16-year-olds, and they've done all the things, the shootings. One poor 15-year-old kid was shot. He was a bystander next to a kid that was part of the gang, and blah, blah, blah. Should their parents be charged as well?
Well,
where does the line get drawn?
Well, I think that was what people originally were thinking, that, they're going to, start going after all these parents in Detroit that, are neglecting. But I don't think that that's the case. I don't think I haven't seen that since this verdict. You know what I mean?
Right. Of course not. And what do you think the main reason is to that?
I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with,
I mean, just because of the sheer amount of
it could
kids?
be. It could be the sheer amount. It could be the culture. It could be a lot of things. But do I think it's fair? No.
But also, are the people that are in gangs, are their parents necessarily buying them the guns, or are they getting them another way? You know what I mean?
Right. So the main argument is that Ethan's parents actually purchased the gun.
Right. As a Christmas gift. And they posted on social media, his gun, da-da-da-da. They couldn't deny it.
Right.
Right?
But that also makes me think, like, okay, does that equate though to second degree manslaughter? I mean, at the very minimum, we know of parents that purchase their underage kids
Oh,
alcohol.
let's
If they go getting a DUI and that child ends up killing somebody, are the parents then held
yes.
for manslaughter?
Yes.
Or are they simply held for providing alcohol to an underage
I think they would be held for what the outcome was of the alcohol
for
they purchased.
manslaughter?
I think so.
I just think it has to be across the board. And I think a lot of reasons, and I'll be honest, I mean, the main reason I think we won't see it when it comes to gang members and everything is because most of those type of crimes are committed by Black and Hispanic. And then there'll be a whole uproar of racism.
Maybe.
And I also think, again, that's where most of these violent crimes are being committed, like in my backyard, because it is a low income, it is a highly populated of, poor, if you will, and they're cutting everything to prevent the poor from being able to ever progress. Again, there's no mental health facilities. You have to go to a different state where I'm at to even get your child an adolescent mental health facility.
Right. No, I agree with you. That's a problem for sure. For sure. They definitely don't make it easy. But I think, like you said, the main point is that they purchased the gun for him and then he used it to kill 7 classmates.
Well, and I also feel like if we're going to start holding parents accountable, then let us discipline and parent our kids the way we need to without the fear
Of
of
CPS.
CPS over our heads. I mean, you're not even allowed to spank your kids anymore. So I don't know. I'm just not fully in agree. I think that the time that they have served is sufficient enough. I do. Nothing's going to bring back those children. God rest their souls. I couldn't fathom how their parents feel. I mean, I honestly never once even imagined what they're going through. But at the same time, how is keeping Ethan's parents locked up? And it's not going to change the outcome. How long do they deserve for the fact that they purchased him a gun? And they should definitely be charged. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm disagreeing with the charge and how long they're looking at with that charge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it is a tough one. It really is. Because, I mean, I wouldn't want to be in their shoes, right? But
Oh, and how much were you doing at 15, 16 that your parents weren't aware of?
I mean, you have a point. You have a point. I can't
And I'm not
argue
saying
that.
this in the case of I'm not saying this just in the case of Ethan, who displayed clear signs that even the school neglected to
But
notify the parents of some of them. But again, if we're talking about opening the doorway, because that's what it's doing, well, then how many other cases are we looking at, and how many families will be destroyed by that? Because if my daughter committed a crime right now that the state deemed I was responsible for, where's my son going? I don't know. I think it's an ugly door to open. I understand what they're doing. I understand why they did it. I just think then, either it has to be across the board or
But
you're
you have
just
to
doing it for
remember,
what?
too, there's a lot more to this case than just that. Like, they were feeding him Xanax from Jennifer's prescription,
Oh, okay.
right? When he
Wow.
was
So
having
they were
issues.
just,
Yep. Like, Jennifer would be
oh,
out riding her horse, and then James, his dad, was out door dashing or whatever. And she
wow.
would be like, just give him one of those, give him a Xanax, blah, blah,
Out
blah.
of her prescription.
Yeah, he never went to the doctor for any mental health at all.
Wow.
So she knew there was an issue, and they just tried to keep it at bay themselves and not deal with it.
That's actually
She sent him to
despicable.
work. Like, he was working in this diner. It was like this is a small town in Michigan. And he worked at like the
Right.
diner on the corner. And there's a
Ethan
video.
did?
Mm-hmm. And he
Okay.
didn't feel good. And James texted Jennifer. We saw all the texts. And he texted Jennifer and he's like, he's not feeling good. He doesn't want to go to work. And she's like, give him a Xanax, whatever, have him go. So he goes to work, and then we see this video from the kitchen where he literally falls over, like
Oh my
sideways,
God.
and falls on the tile floor. And then when we saw pictures of his room, he had booze in there as well. So they're giving him Xanax. He's drinking booze. He's killing baby birds. I mean, fuck, look in his
Yeah.
room. There were empty fists of whiskey and vodka in his bedroom.
Jesus. Okay.
So they were just
So
ignoring him, basically.
right. This is a little more than just a neglectful mom who, disassociated from her life, from her
Oh
family
yeah,
life.
it's extreme.
This is a lot more than that. Okay. Well, that changes a lot, to be
I mean,
honest.
medicating him with the Xanax, and yeah, it was a bad scene. He wasn't getting the help he needed for sure. And
And then I remember,
had they taken him to the doctor, had they locked up the gun, this wouldn't have happened, right?
right. And I remember, like, his only friend moved away too, correct?
Well, I don't think he moved away. I think that was like an excuse. So I think the parents of this kid caught wind that something was up with Ethan, that he was weird, and they separated
Right.
their kid from him. But yes, he
Okay.
lost
Smart
his
move.
friend. His dog died. His brother was living with them and moved back to Florida during COVID. So his brother moved away. His friend
His
was cut off. He lost his
mom's
dog.
having an affair.
His mom's having an
More
affair. They're
concerned
fighting all the time.
more concerned about the horse.
Right. Right.
Okay.
So there was a lot of things going on in Ethan's life, right? Ethan had a lot of fucking turmoil.
And there's a lot of people that found Ethan as well.
Right. I mean, extended family, they all came to visit. All these people never took the time to talk to Ethan, you know?
You know what I'm very curious of right now?
Oh, his grandma died too. That's right. He had a lot of losses, y'all.
I'm very curious, Jay. Would you consider making a poll asking if people feel sympathy for this 15-year-old?
Okay.
How many people see Ethan as a victim and or sympathize with him, or do you see him as a mentally disturbed person? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm very curious.
I think a lot of people have sympathy, but also see that he's very disturbed.
Yeah.
Because
Like,
I
I'm
do
curious,
feel
do you-
bad for the kid. Because
Right.
he's a kid, right?
Right.
He should have had parents that were looking out for his best interest, and he didn't. And then he had a bunch of losses and COVID, and he was probably already, experiencing mental health issues, and then that just compounded it.
Right.
It looks like it's about split 59-41 for yes.
Genuinely curious. I mean, he's a 15-year-old, right? We saw his drawlins. We saw the way he behaved. We hear the way he acted in juvie. He was a danger to the other kids. We see the way he's acting in a prison right now, but he's 15.
Right. I think we can see it both ways. I think we can be disgusted by his actions and still see that he was failed as a child, right?
Right.
He was pleading for help. Paul Cremo, you're right. He said, I see Ethan
Right.
as a very disturbed person. He pleaded for help and the parents shrugged it off.
Right, but you notice what I noticed there that Paul said? Person. Very disturbed person. He doesn't see him as a very disturbed child.
Right.
Because at some point, do you recognize these? He's a bigger kid too, right? But do you recognize that he was still a child?
Yeah. I'm going to look up his.
As a parent
wanna
of
see
5,
his
I feel
mugshot.
sad that he was neglected, but it doesn't overshadow the fact of what he did. Ethan legally knew wrong from right. Now, what did Ethan have any type of diagnosis, like
No,
bipolar?
because he never went. He never.
He never went.
Mm-mm.
He's not like autistic or anything like that. Nothing on the books.
Not that we know of, but I have a
Hmm.
feeling that he could have like fetal alcohol. Here's his mugshot.
Yeah, can you pull up a picture of him?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay.
So this would be the most recent.
Let me
Wow,
see.
he's 6'1" and 204.
That's what I mean, he's a big- Yeah,
He's a big
he was
kid.
a big ass kid.
He's 18
He
now.
does have the facial structure of fetal alcohol syndrome.
He does. And knowing that Jennifer was a big drinker, was she drinking when she was prego?
And I mean, there you go, right? Like, look at that. He's 6'1".
I know he's huge. He's huge. So he's in.
Small eyes, thin upper lip, flattened nose.
The eyes
Let
are
me look
part
at
are
it.
apart. Mm-hmm.
The eyes parted, yeah. Intellectual disabilities, learning disability, attention and memory, difficulty with problem solving, decision making, hyperactive, impulsive, aggressive behavior, difficult with social interactions. His nose is a little bit bigger than most with
Look at all these charges, though.
I wonder what his
Fucking
ear looks
crazy.
like.
But we also suspect that he harmed his dog and a kitten, too. So this kid could have been like the making of a serial killer, to be honest. Like, that's what he said he wanted to be.
Right.
I mean, he was out in the
look at
shed,
him.
like, killing baby birds, dissecting them, and then he was sending the videos and pictures to his friend. I think that's why the friend's parents disconnected from him. But if they knew about the animals, they should have reported it. I don't know if they did or not. Because
Well, that's what I was going to say.
kid
So
never
how
testified.
again? How many people failed him?
Right.
And I know, I mean, given the fact he's 6'4", 6'1", 204 pounds, you're kind of, I mean, you know what he reminds me of? What was that? The one serial that he actually his own mother's head and was using it.
Oh.
What was that guy's name?
God, I can't remember, but I know what you're talking about.
He was also really big and tall, and matter of fact, police thought he was very helpful. He was well known. What the hell's that guy's name? Anybody know? Ed Kemper. Thank you, Melissa.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Ed Kemper. That's who he's kind of reminding me of. I guess probably just
He
more
kind of
based off his
looks like
height
him,
and
yeah.
looks and all. Yeah.
Here's the dad.
And people loved Ed Kemper. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
they
He was
thought,
an infamous serial killer, yeah.
Yeah, but he was also like Big Ed. Like the police know him, and
Do you know that they talked to him when they arrested Brian Koberger?
They talked to Ed Kemper.
Uh-huh. They talked to
What, to get his opinion?
Yep. They got his opinion, and they got also, I think, BTK's opinion. Isn't that weird?
That is weird. Like, oh, hey.
Yeah.
Hey, guys. Long time no see.
I know.
Can I get your thoughts on this?
Creepy as fuck. There's Jennifer. All right, let's see what our poll says.
Yeah.
All right.
We don't have enough votes. Get your votes in,
Oh,
folks.
we only have
we're
67.
pretty much-
We don't have that
Yeah.
many people here. Get your votes
Well,
in, peeps.
189. A lot of people are listening while they're working or driving, and, like I was cleaning. Yeah, Rob Zombie's edition of Michael Myers.
Did you
But that's
see,
50-50.
Did you see Ethan's mental breakdown when he attacked the guards? Is that when they put the spit mask on him? Dude, I felt so bad
I
for that
did.
kid. Oof.
He was screaming.
I didn't
"Help
like
me,"
that.
the
Yeah,
voices.
I didn't like that.
But was that real, or was that,
They say
was he
it
kind
wasn't
of-
real. They say it wasn't.
Right.
But
I
it's
mean,
still hard to
he's-
watch, man. It was really
He's very
hard.
manipulative.
Right.
But he's also a kid, and I say all of this because a lot of times with society, we decide and deem who we see as a child and who we don't. And I think that's problematic. I think we need to recognize that, although, albeit, and Crumbley wasn't that tall when he was arrested, because I'm looking at photos right now, he doesn't appear that tall, but he was still a child. But because he was such a sociopathic child, people don't sympathize with him as a child. But he's a child. I just...
It's a tough
I
one.
don't know.
It's a tough one. Can't even drive a car, but he's in prison,
Right. Right. And he'll be there, we'll pay for him to be there the rest of his fucking life.
He's going to get a college degree to do what with?
And if he's 6'1" right now, man, I mean, I don't know. Like,
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's going to be a problem.
I think he is a problem. And I don't know. This is why I kind of debate, like, have we become too sensitive when it comes to even prison and stuff? Like, people are fucking part of it. You know what I mean? Like, part of me is like, bring back an eye for an eye. Bring back, let's stop tying up our court systems and having all these people, these monsters that don't deserve to even breathe air, sit there and breathe air. Like, Wade Wilson is living his best life on death row. That man is the happiest he's ever been, the wealthiest he's ever been, the most popular he's ever been. On death row, where he even admits that being on death row is better because you get a bigger cell, you get more food, you get more access to things like TVs, and, they get tablets all day long, too. They get fucking tablets all day long. This guy didn't have a cell phone on the streets, but he has a cell phone in jail. And it's like we're kind of coddling, it's a whole society we have, to be honest, of coddling fucking prisoners anymore. No, I don't think I would, Mr. Meatball. Honestly, I don't think I would. I would still be sympathetic towards the parents. I think anybody would have more empathy if, gosh forbid.
Mr. Meatball says you'd probably feel very differently about empathy if one of your children was murdered in Oxford High School.
No, I respectfully disagree.
Kay Prudhomme, I agree with you. I really have a hard time letting the school off the hook with this one.
That's what I mean. The school's accountable. The child friends' parents are accountable. Ethan's parents are accountable. Society has, and that's why that old saying, it takes a village, is very real. It takes a village. Do you know between the ages of 8 and I believe it's 8 and 14, your kids learn more about learn more from the neighbors, the teachers, the people around town. If they play sports, the coaches and all that, they get more influenced by them than they do within their home. You guys know that?
For sure.
There's a whole study. Hold on. Let me look up the ages.
One Eye Open says, how can you be sympathetic to these parents who gave him a gun and they knew he was psychologically off balance? So they knew what could happen. I'm angry at the school and the parents. I really am.
I'll tell you why, because nobody expects that their kids would ever do something like this. Do you think your little Johnny or your little Sally would ever do something like this? You can't expect, nobody expects the worst out of their own children.
Right.
No matter the monster we can see Ethan as.
But Granny, they did see what he was drawing that day. They were shown the worksheet of the gun with bullets, with blood, with people. Now, that should tell you something. Like if you just bought your kid a gun and then you get called down to the school because he's drawing disturbing pictures of the same gun that you just bought him, wouldn't that like trigger something in your mind that something's not right? I mean, you can't say they didn't have any idea, right? Because they did that day and they chose to keep him in school. They didn't want to deal with them. Still, they didn't want to
Right, but they thought he was suicidal, right?
Right. Would you leave your suicidal daughter in school?
No, I wouldn't. But would the school allow me to either?
They shouldn't have. No, they shouldn't.
Right.
Go back to class. I mean, really?
Right.
The kid's suicidal and you send him back to class? That's how we deal with it?
And then the fact that the text message, as stated, I just seen in the chat too, said don't do it when they heard there was a shooting. She knew. She knew it was him.
The mom said, don't do it, Ethan. Yeah, that was another thing that got her too.
I mean, listen, I'm not saying that the parents are innocent by any means. I'm just saying, do they deserve, as much jail time as they're getting?
Oh, and the day before, he was caught searching for ammo during class, and Jennifer told him, you just got to learn not to get caught.
But did she think that was innocent, like searching for ammo for his own gun?
I don't know. I think you just have to put everything together. You know what I mean?
And mom wasn't all the way there either. Xanax, alcohol, having an affair.
Right. Completely disconnected.
Right. And does their mental health come into play with all of this?
Sure.
Sure. Like I just...
There's a reason why Jennifer was drinking like she was, right? There's always a reason for any kind of abuse of any substance.
Listen, I'm not upset at anybody's opinions. This doesn't hit me personally because luckily it wasn't my child that's life was taken that day. It's not my child that took somebody's life that day, so I'm not offended by anybody's opinions on this. I like I said, I'm more worried about the precedent that is going to set more than anything else.
Well, I would hope the precedent it would set is if you have a child, lock your gun up. Right?
Yeah, but we know that it hasn't because there's been shootings since. How about, did you just see that fucking stepfather, Jay? The stepfather that was like 2 a.m. and he wanted to look cool for his I believe the little boy was 7 years old, stepson. So he pretended to shoot the gun at him, but he actually shot the gun at him.
No.
Taking his life.
Fucking idiots.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of the problem too, having idiots that
Right.
have access to guns. And then to top it off, because I'm a felon for a nonviolent crime, I'm not allowed to even hold a gun. So I'm not even allowed to protect myself from the maniacs, such as the Ethans and the Ethan's parents and, the zany, drunken up people that do have access to guns.
Right.
I just think a lot of laws need to change, and I think they need to change ASAP. And I don't think, what's the gun organization called? The
NRA.
Yeah, I don't think they should have the power to fucking just hand, powerful people a bunch of money and be like, yeah, just let us do what we're doing.
I know.
There's been understudied cases where they sent teenagers into gun shows, and every seller there, besides one, was willing to sell the teenager a gun.
Nuts.
And now they can make 3D guns, Jay. Now they can make 3D
I know.
fucking
They
guns.
can make their own. It's crazy. Paul
society
Cremo said,
we're not
Jay, I
ready.
lived with my nephew for 3 years. In the 3 years, he was so respectful to me, so nice, so helpful. I never looked at his social media. He never showed any abnormal behavior.
Well, imagine, Paul, they decide to come and arrest you because he lived with you for 3 years, and in their mind, you should have saw the signs.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Now, I get it. In Ethan's, the signs were overwhelming, right? Like, I didn't realize some of the things you just said. I didn't follow the case that closely,
Right.
so maybe I shouldn't have had an opinion on it.
No,
But
you're good. I mean,
I'm thinking of the people like Paul. I'm thinking of the parents of the girl. And what about the shooting that just took place last week? Are they all going to be arrested as well? Let's go back to the Columbine. Why wasn't his parents held accountable? He showed clear
well,
signs.
because they didn't buy them the gun, right? The parents didn't buy the gun and say, "Here you go. This is your gun." So it's different.
So basically, it comes down to him personally owning the gun
Being negligent
by them purchasing it.
Right. They actually
Okay.
bought the murder weapon.
Fair enough.
And I think that's where the difference is. But that trial, there's a trial going on. I think I texted you about it. In
One night
Florida.
open, don't ever question my fucking parenting or what I'm teaching my fucking kids. Don't ever.
No, she didn't think that was.
She didn't think that was damn innocent, Grady. I'm starting to worry about what you're teaching your kids and letting them get away with.
That's
I'm the one
rude.
who will make a call if you think the kid's fucking innocent. Don't ever question my fucking parenting.
She literally just sat here and talked about getting her daughter help.
And then
when
they
she
said it
needed
again. You're making me worry about what you thinking your kids are innocent? I'm the one that said they're not fucking innocent. My whole point being, you can't decide that which kid's innocent at 15 and which one isn't because one looks more like a particular little 15-year-old kid compared to Ethan, who looked like a sociopath.
I think what you're saying
bring
is
my
how
kids
can you
into
how
this.
can you predict this, right? Is what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying is how can you predict this?
But we don't
Worry
need
about
to
what I'm teaching my
well,
fucking
we don't
kids.
need we don't need to get fucking personal here. That's rude.
Right, my kids don't hear me discussing any of this. You think I'm sitting down with my fucking kids and saying, "Do you think Ethan Crumbley's parents deserved?" No, the fuck out of here. I'm the last person to ever say my kids are innocent because I know what the fuck I was doing at 15, which is what I just said to Jay. Did your parents know what you were doing at 15, 16? So I don't know why you're acting like I'm saying kids are innocent.
They just want to get your goat.
Oh, they got
Who
my
is
goat.
one eye open?
I don't know, but they, have fucking audacity. Why don't you open up one ear instead and start fucking listening before you bring up my children?
They're gone. They're gone.
What an ignorant thing to say. I'm starting to worry about what you're teaching your children.
I think it's just someone that wanted to come at you. That's ridiculous. She cared more about her horse and her side piece than she cared about her own mentally struggling child, says Mitten Mama.
I agree, and I cared very much about my mentally struggling child. Hence the fucking hoops I had to jump over, which is why I'm up here saying they don't make it easy for us.
Thank you, Sophia, for gifting a membership. Welcome in, Nicole B.
Nicole. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
That should just piss me off. Like, my
Well,
kids
you don't
hear
deserve
my-
personal attacks just because you came up here to discuss. That's fucking ridiculous. We don't
And I
tolerate
said,
that.
I didn't know all of these details. This makes a big difference. Again, I'm just saying, does it set open, the doorway for others? Are we now going to go back and we're going to look at every single thing and say, oh, well, there's a reason why we can blame the parent for this. Or there's a reason, they should have saw that. Like, Jeffrey Dahmer's fucking dad was sitting there cutting animals open with them.
True. True. Well, I mean, maybe we've evolved since then. Maybe we've put more blame on parents now. You know, we're holding them more accountable.
I agree.
Mr. Meatball says at the end of the day, they broke the law. They had a minor in the home and didn't lock the gun. Said minor killed 6 people.
No, and I agree. I just know there's other cases of parents who did not properly lock their guns and or gave their kids, the code to the gun. That should also be held accountable. And at what point does that begin, or does it stop here? You know what I mean? I don't know.
I mean, it's one thing to have a gun and take your kid to the shooting range and, be pro-gun and teach them how to, responsibly own a gun.
Right.
But they didn't do that.
Wasn't his area big for hunting and stuff?
This is a handgun though.
Well, Nicole B knows. I just said that the other day. I said, good, start holding these parents accountable and maybe we'll have less crime from these children. I'm not against it. I'm against how much time do I think is sufficient enough for that. I mean, we're talking about jail.
Prison.
Right. Jen, I'm sorry to hear that. It's not easy. It's hard for these kids. And then you have the pressure of social media. You have the influence of social media. The bullying doesn't stop when they leave the building anymore. It follows them home via social media. These kids are being brought up in a whole new world. And it's really hard. We're not ready for what social media has done to our society as a whole. And like I said, now we have these 3D devices that can actually freaking make guns. It's ludicrous. Charge them for not locking, buying views, drugging him, not this. How much? What are they looking at? Like 15 years
10
or
to
something,
15.
right?
Mm-hmm.
10 to 15, yeah.
Evelyn says, Granny, you did the right thing by your daughter. Ethan's parents were grossly negligent in the death of the kids.
Of 4 kids. I agree. But do you... I don't know. Think of how long 10 to 15 years are. Does it fit the bill?
Involuntary manslaughter, that's the sentence.
Yeah, I suppose that you're right. That's the sentence, right?
I think this is going to be one to be debated for a long time. Paul says it's very hard to know what the person has planned unless they tell you about it. When they keep quiet, lonely, and when they're going through relationship problems and loved ones passed away.
That's what I'm saying. I do think it's a lot. I think
that we
people
don't
want them to
recognize
go for long.
I don't think we recognize the impact that, like you said, that COVID had. And I think that Ethan's case specifically, the COVID and all of the losses for someone like him,
right?
That should be recognized by parents. Parents need to pay attention that these kids also need help sometimes. You know what I mean? His grandma died. His dog died. His brother moved away. His friend cut him off. That's a lot.
They were just too self-centered. They didn't deserve to be parents.
Right.
And Pine Needle gets exactly what I'm saying. I understand what you were saying. It becomes a slippery slope in the legal system. Why some cases versus others? The mental health crisis, the refusal for responsible gun control. Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, just simply locking away these parents for 10 to 15 years does not even begin to touch the actual problem here. I don't know.
Dr. Melmo, you got a point. His worksheet that they saw that day said the thoughts won't stop. Help me.
Right. And the school saw them as well. They all failed. They all failed. Right, Robin. And I was thinking that the other day, right? Like everybody's about, gun lockers and put them in safes and all of this. Well, if I'm in my living room and an intruder comes in, do I have time to run upstairs, unlock the safe with the code? And, it's a lot. It's a lot to ask of people. And I think that's why some people get a little, lenient with it. Now, again, does your average family have a little sociopathic murderer in the making in their home? No. But I don't know. I think it's what are the effects of, if this sets a precedence, what are the effects of that going to look like?
You see this
What is
worksheet?
this?
So this is his
Yeah.
worksheet from that day. And when he got caught, he quickly crossed out the gun. He wrote, "The
Oh.
thoughts won't stop." He scribbled out,
Help
"Help
me."
me."
Him with a gun.
The guy with dead with blood, he scribbled that out.
And then look at this. Then he sociopathically wrote, "I love my life so much. Harmless acts. We're all friends here." Oh,
the
that's
world,
chilling.
right here, it says the world is dead. It's scribbled out. I can't remember what this one says. Look at
That is
Oxford
chilling,
High
Jay.
School rocks. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. And then the way he fucking hit it by writing that shit next.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
So it says officials said a teacher took a photo of the paper before Ethan Crumbley scribbled out some of his words and drawings. That teacher notified school administrators who met with the teen and his parents shortly before the shooting. Ethan Crumbley's parents allegedly declined to take him home from school after the discovery of the drawings.
right. But this again, why didn't anybody as swiftly and quickly call the police and say this child needs to go inpatient right now?
Right.
They had the capabilities. They had the power.
And the teacher did the right thing, right? Noticing this, taking a picture of it, sending him down to the counselor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And then the fact that he
chilling.
tried to cover it up by being like, "I love my life."
I know. It's,
Oh, harmless acts. We're all friends here. That's scary. He's scary.
here's another one.
Do you even think that if this kid would, let's say this kid went inpatient, let's say he went inpatient for 2 to 3 weeks, that's usually how long they go in for. Usually it's 2 weeks. Would that even suffice? Was this kid so far gone that there was no chance at all?
I almost
even-
think that he was like a serial killer in the making. Like, I don't know if he could be helped. Like, here's a page from his journal. Here is my idea. I want to do what he did. I want America to hear what I did. I know that any shootings have happened I know that rarely any shootings have happened in Michigan. So that means I will cause the largest school shooting ever in the state. I am not going to tell myself I will surrender to the police. I wish to hear the screams of the children as I shoot
I'm not going to
them.
kill myself.
Oh, I'm not going to kill myself.
To
I
kill
will surrender
myself.
to the police. I wish to hear the screams of the children as I shoot them. All I need is my 9mm pistol, which I am currently begging my dad for.
Currently begging my dad for.
And then here's
What is-
another page, defendant's
Sick
journal.
kid,
It says 1, 9mm pistol, extra mags. 2, 5 Molotov cocktails. Or 2 to 5 Molotov cocktails. 1 to 3, what does it say? Power something flares?
It's not on my screen. I don't see it. Oh, I see it now.
Pair of gloves. I have lost every hope of life. Help me. I will tell some close friends to not come to school the day of the shooting.
So he had friends.
Pair of gloves, hat, jacket, mask, knife. I wonder what life in prison will be like. I just saw a group of girls sitting down in the hallway. If I had my pistol on me, then I would have not hesitated to blow both their brains out. I would just hope their
Fucking
parents,
Christ.
right? I would just hope their parents will fill with sadness and distraught when I shoot up the school. I hope that every parent of kids I gratefully murder will be so sad that they kill themselves. I want all of
Oh, my
America to
God.
see the darkness in me. Something and hear me. I want to impact the world with this. I'm going to record the shooting so when they show the video in court, everyone can see their children and friends dying. I want for the parents to see their kids burn to ash and bawl their eyes out. I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison, rotting away like a tomato.
See, I'm sorry to say this, but this kid wants to be famous off of what he did. He's practically gotten what he wanted because now not only is he But now his parents as well, and I'm not saying they shouldn't because of that, but again, it goes to ask the question of, at what point do we stop letting them waste away in prison like a tomato?
I don't know.
This kid's fucking disturbed.
He says, ready, and the 9mm ready. Then I will walk behind any girl, pretty, and shoot them in the back of the head. I will then shoot anyone I see aiming for the head until I have to, what does it say? Something, and I will find a full class. I will then find a full class.
And this was his home journals? These were in his house?
They were in his backpack. They would
In
have
his backpack
they would
that
have
day.
found these. They would have found all these. If they had looked in the fucking backpack, they would have found these and the gun.
And if his parents would have looked in his backpack, like how many parents don't look in their kids' backpacks anymore because they think everything's being done
Well-
via the computers now? Look in your kids. You know what?
You know what? That's a
They
good point.
deserve the 15, to be honest.
It's a good point because you know what else, Granny, is a good point? They got in an argument the night before the shooting about his grades. So she didn't
So
even
they- so-
check his backpack to make sure he had his shit. She didn't do shit.
She just wasn't a fucking parent.
Nope.
And now other parents are without their kid. All right, I get the 15 years. I get it.
There's a lot.
I get it. Matter of fact, maybe they deserve more, to be honest. I mean, I'm serious now
disturbing.
because this could have. All right, killing the birds. Maybe they didn't know about it, but then they listen. One of the first signs your kids are depressed is the way their rooms look. Okay.
Yes.
And a lot of times, it's just it's a reflection of how they feel inside. So when your kids' rooms or your house looks that dirty, and you have to have fly traps and fucking roach traps, but I digress on that. Maybe it's time that you sit down with your child. You don't just switch them to another room and let them start all over again. They just didn't fucking care. They weren't involved. What was the dad doing? Mom was having an affair. She was, involved with her horses, Xanax and boozing. What was the fucking father doing?
Oh, well, the rumor has it he was also having an affair, but he was quote unquote door dashing while she was at the stables drinking beer and riding her horse. That's where my my sound bite. That's where my sound bite comes from, where her lawyer says, Jennifer said, "I'm gonna get drunk and ride my horse." That was what she texted her husband. When he texted her about Ethan, she replied, "I'm gonna get drunk and ride my horse."
Now, did Dad actually text her about Ethan? What did he say about Ethan?
I can't remember now exactly.
Was it something like he's disturbed?
It might have been something about him not wanting to do something, or I can't remember what it was about.
Jesus.
But her solution was to leave work after work and go get a case of beer, and go to the stables and get drunk. So they even had the lady that she rented the stable space from that testified, that said Jennifer told her how weird Ethan was and blah, blah, blah. So there was a lot. Like, she knew. You know what I mean? Like, she knew. She was talking to...
And she was probably angry that her son was a fucking outcast.
Yep.
A weirdo. Did the dad have to?
Did what?
Are you saying I sounded like MGL, Lucette? Because I like you, and I don't want
Oh
to
my
have to
God,
not
Jay, I
like
thought
you.
that was Molly Golightly all this time. Oh my God. It's the accent.
Ugh. Did the dad have to DoorDash? Like, were they financially not okay that he had to
Well, he
DoorDash?
lost his job during COVID, apparently. And she had a good job, though. She was like working for a real estate company, like a leasing company, and she was like their marketing director. So she had she had a good job, and
They had horses.
She had a flexible schedule, but Dad was neglectful too. They were both, drinking, doing whatever, not dealing with Ethan.
And like I said, they had horses that cost a lot to, own a horse and all of that, and
Yes.
affairs and all of that. So yeah, they were just, like I said, I didn't follow this as closely. I didn't realize there were all these, again, the birds. Okay, maybe they weren't aware of that or whatever. But then when you're seeing letters, literally handwritten notes such as that.
Listen to this, Granny. I want you to hear this part. I want to get your opinion on this. So this is a clip from his trial. I'm going to play this. I want to get your opinion.
Also, there is a baby bird's nest right next to my house with 5 baby birds in it. I can also reach them. 3 devil emojis. Tomorrow, I'm making my move. I will get video and pics. I can't wait till tomorrow. There is 5 and they're going to die anyways.
Hold on. The music?
I'm going to direct you to a text message from April the 17th, 2021. Can you please tell us what the defendant wrote?
I want to take the axe and chip a bird in half.
Okay. April the 25th, 2021. What do you write?
Shoot it, torture it, dissect it. I want to chop it in half with an axe.
And that leads to a discussion with another individual about catching and killing fish?
Yes.
What did the defendant write then?
I want to kill it while it's alive so it can feel the pain.
Now, May the 1st, 2021. What did the defendant write?
I want to take something heavy and break its beak. I can't wait, dude. I'm so fucked up. I'm going to break its beak, then chop its head off. I'm going to take so many vids and pics.
The next day, May the 2nd, 2021, this conversation continue?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I want to hear it scream. The first vid, though, I want to torture it. And it's so young, too. Like it's just born and already going to be killed. It's like 2 days old. I'm going to snap the beak off and then chop its head off. Then take out its heart. Then chop it into pieces. And also take out the brain. Then smash it into little bits. I'm so fucked up, I like it. Jeffrey Dahmer got the good idea. Only thing he did wrong was get caught.
Also on May the 2nd, 2021 at 4:33 in the afternoon, what did the defendant write?
I want to kill another bird so badly, or baby bird. I can reach into the nest. They're not safe.
The next day, May the 3rd, 2021, what did the defendant text?
During third hour, all I thought about was ways to torture the bird. I'm going to film this like a documentary. My dad is pulling out of the driveway right now. I'm going to wait a couple minutes, though, just in case he comes back.
Okay. You said there were 2 videos uncovered in the defendant's phone?
Yes.
And then the defendant texted about what he did afterwards?
Yes, sir.
Okay. May the 3rd, 2021.
Very
graphic, but go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just finished. The vid is too long, so I can't send, but I can send pics right before I throw it out. Pictures were sent.
And then you sent pictures of that individual?
Yes, sir.
Okay, please continue.
I cannot wait to show you the vid. It's so fucking disturbing. And as I don't even remember saying half the stuff. Like I talked to the bird like a little child while torturing it. I can't wait to show you, dude. It was so fucking fun, dude. This is the
thing is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thing is, the vid ends halfway through, so you don't see the good stuff. I put a drill in its stomach and skull. I also shot the gun at it a couple times in the stomach and in its head. I also chopped it in half with the axe. I also smashed its head with the hammer at the end of it, and at the end, and its eye bulged out, just like Glenn's.
What's Glenn in reference to?
The TV show The Walking Dead.
Okay, character on that show?
Yes.
Okay, continue, please.
Like the eyelids came apart, and I could see the bird's eye. There are still 3 birds left. I was originally going to try and stick a toothpick up its ass, but I couldn't find any.
Oh my fucking God.
I can't wait to show you the vid. It's 8 minutes long. Like I couldn't stop laughing my ass off when I rewatched the vid.
Lieutenant, you've reviewed the evidence on the defense.
Do I need to play any more?
No. But again, did the friend report this prior?
See, that's the thing. No. That's the
All right,
thing.
so is anybody looking into that fucking kid too?
Right. That kid was protected during this trial. FYI.
Why?
I don't know.
Why?
I don't know, man. That's what I'm thinking. This was probably the friend that wasn't allowed to come over anymore. But my God, report this kind of shit, man. Your kid's getting text messages and videos like this?
That was 3 months before the shooting, too.
Yep. Dr. Malmo said, I
Wow.
think that kid is in a treatment facility. He left prior to the shooting, so maybe his family got him help. Maybe they
This
did
is why-
report it. Who knows? I never heard that they did.
This is why we need to, you need to go through your kids' phones. Fuck all that about kids deserve their privacy. No, they don't.
Right.
No, they don't. He said I talked to it like a little kid.
Oh my God, I know. He said it was just born.
Like 2 days old and it's dead. Ha ha. Oh my God.
Right. And he's watching The Walking Dead.
Oh yeah. No shock there.
Look at this.
That was a
Look
really
at this.
popular
This
show.
is really disturbing. Here's the final entry. He says, after discussing the bird video and his torture and killing, the defendant stated, quote, most serial killers get their damage from their family or of accidents, but I have no trauma from my past. I was just born this way. That's fucking chilling. Oh my God. It just goes on and on, man.
God, I want to kill right now.
Mm-hmm. God, I want to kill right now. I hit a bird yesterday 2 times, but it flew away. And that's in frickin' summertime before they were even back in school. Look at that. There have been no baby birds to torture in for a long time, and I'm getting that feeling where I need to kill again. Look at this. Most case, they're so young and they had a whole life ahead of them, but then I took it away. That is what I like.
And they scream when you hurt them. Oh my God. Well, I'm sorry to say, and I'm not trying to place blame on anybody else, but this was a few months prior to the shooting. So, teach your kids that they can come to you with things like this.
Yeah, they don't deserve privacy. Are you leaving, Paul? I'll see you. Yeah, thank you. Update me if anything changes. Other than that, we'll see you at the end of February. Hang in there, buddy. Wow. Ark says, wow, I'm so thankful for my kid having enough foresight at 6 years old to tell me about his friend who was 7 and had a kill list. The kid got help. He's 21 now and a pretty average young man. It's wild. But he did. He liked Dahmer. And those Netflix fucking things where they glorify these motherfuckers doesn't help.
They don't. And a bunch of people come out and they're like, oh my God, Dahmer's so hard.
Yeah. They put these fucking actors in there that are, easy on the eyes. Let's face it. Jeff Dahmer was not fucking easy on the eyes at all.
No.
He's disgusting. Nope. He's a sick, disgusting person. And they make him look all cute, like the Ted Bundy one, too. Fuck that.
Right.
Ted Bundy was a psychopath. But then they make him all cute. It makes me sick.
Well, people said that Bundy was very attractive. And I don't think he was attractive.
He was charismatic and I don't think he was attractive either, but I can see where people thought that. But now we see the same thing with Kohberger. We got the fucking Kohberger fangirls, the Wade Wilson fangirls. It's sick.
Mm-hmm. Well, and quite frankly, the Menendez brothers, too. Mm-hmm. You know how I feel about that.
Yeah, well, they may not be getting what they wanted.
Well, yeah.
So whatever their fate may be is their fate in my eyes.
Well, thanks to the one brother, having his little affair and everything and giving a glimpse of who he really is.
Right. Maybe Lyle should have kept it in his pants till he got out.
I'll be honest, Luigi is hot.
Luigi is a nice looking guy. What the fuck? That's wild too.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of crazy shit. Hey, did you happen to catch that concert last night?
No.
They had you know how they did like Live Aid back in the day and like Farm Aid and all that
stuff?
They had a fire, like the Fire Aid in California.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they had a lot of good. Yeah, they had a lot of good performers. Red Hot Chili Peppers were on there. It was all in the middle of the night because it was in California, but it was really good if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, I didn't even hear about that.
Watch The Iceman. It's chilling as hell. I've never heard of it.
No, BK is not good looking.
He's creepy as fuck. It was an interesting lineup. It was pretty cool.
Did you hear about the jail security guard that was a OnlyFans woman? She had sex with that inmate.
I didn't watch it, but I saw the thing.
Yeah, so she had sex with that inmate, and then of course, they got caught. It got caught, whatever. Well, that inmate was having a visit with his I guess girlfriend or whatever, and their couple-month-old baby. I believe she was 5 months old when he was jumped by the other jailers and the other prisoners. I mean, and the baby suffered a skull fracture.
Oh Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Where was that at?
I'm not even sure, actually. Let me see. But he was good looking. But he got punished for what the prison guard, OnlyFans prison guard did.
Angie says Luigi. Who's Yuck? Brian? The Iceman was locked
Brian's
up in
very-
Trenton, Jersey in Mercer County Jail during trial. I don't know who the Iceman is. Drive safe, Pine. So our poll, we got 139 votes. Do you feel sympathy for Ethan? 53% said yes. 47% said no.
Mm.
But after seeing all the baby bird stuff, do you still feel the same? Like he should have gotten help from his parents, even though he was fucked up? Because I do. Like, even though he was that twisted, I still think that he deserved to get help, and that his parents failed him in that aspect by not paying attention, right?
Well, if anything, they failed the other kids that they could have protected. Because I think Ethan may have been a lost cause, but they certainly failed the other kids.
Right.
They certainly failed the other kids.
Stephanie
for sure.
says
I mean, they
that-
failed him as well.
Right. Stephanie says she doesn't feel much sympathy after the bird. Neither does Miss Robin.
Mm-mm.
Because you know what? He had that like urge, like he said, to kill.
Right, but could he control that urge? Right, like he still is a misguided and neglected child.
Right. So is he fighting in prison? I think he was. Those urges don't go away, right? Like if he had those urges to kill that bird, and then when he did it, he like was good for a while and then felt it again. Like that just doesn't go away unless they have him medicated now. Maybe he's not getting those urges as like he was
With the medications and stuff.
Right. Because you know he had to been put on meds.
Yeah, I agree.
I just wonder what his diagnosis is.
Now I further understand why the parents are being charged the way they are as well.
Yeah, there's just so much. You know, it just wasn't cut and dry. There was a lot. I think
Yeah,
that added up,
clearly
that
wasn't.
showed how negligent they were.
I mean, the fact that he said he was waiting for his dad to leave and make sure he didn't come back shows that, you know,
He knew what he was
hiding
doing.
it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing. But he also, on the other hand, was crying out for help, right? That morning, if they would have read that worksheet, help me, and actually listened, you know, he had it all right there. It was all in front of their face.
But Jay, did he do that on purpose, right? And help me? Because on the messages to his friends, he's like, I love this. I love, you know, I'm a, you know, he recognizes, and he's not asking for help from his friend. He's not saying like, dude, I need help. There's something wrong with me. He's loving it. He's like, this is great. I feel, you know, so is he so fucking conning and manipulative that he wrote help me intentionally?
Right.
And just like he did that whole like thing when he was, you know, and they had to put the thing over his head and he's screaming, oh, was that all an act? This kid's fucking evil.
And they,
I mean, their shit's just straight up evil.
See, and when we first saw the spit mask where he's going nuts, everybody was like, oh my God, this is terrible. They're torturing this
poor
kid.
kid.
Yeah. And then we saw the bird evidence. And I think everybody was like, whoa. Okay, so I just put up a poll. You guys vote. I put, is Ethan beyond help? Yes, no, or unsure? What do you think? Yes, there were videos of him hurting the birds. There's also pictures. That's why I stopped the video. Because there's pictures, and I didn't want those shown today. It's disturbing as fuck. But the fact that he was thinking about sticking a toothpick up the bird's ass is...
Right.
It goes beyond just killing the bird. Like... People like that don't get better, right? They go on and they move on to maybe bigger animals. And then when that's not enough of the rush, then it's the
and
people.
would have been babies and humans,
Yes.
right?
He said he wanted to kill babies who had their whole life in front of them. Sick. Sick.
I'm sorry.
Wow. 68% think so far he's beyond help.
I hate to say this, but does he deserve our government funding for help? Does he deserve that help?
Totally broken, says Robin. Redneck says he's definitely broken in the brain.
I mean, again, these people, they go into prison, they have access to tablets all the time. They're getting fed, they're getting housed, they're living amongst other people. Us normal folks wouldn't enjoy prison at all, but there are some people that genuinely enjoy it. Like
Yeah.
Wade Wilson's living his best life.
They thrive in
This
prison.
kid,
It's weird.
right? And you got this kid that we're going to now pay to house for how many years in a prison when literally he's fucking this. He's disturbing. He tormented the other kids in juvie. He's now 6'1" and he's still growing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He may be done, but he's still, there's still a chance of him growing more. Is he going to become a menace or continue to be a menace, especially with him getting bigger? And
well,
I don't know.
Aristocat, in all seriousness, she said, so I need to go to prison to get mental help.
Right.
Well, yeah, because they shut down all the state hospitals in Michigan as well.
Right.
So where the fuck are they putting these people? In jail.
In jail.
I don't think they can have contact, Robin.
His parents?
Yeah, I think that was said in the trial that there was, or he didn't.
Let's face
he
it.
didn't want any contact with them, I think is what it was.
Well, the mom didn't want any contact with him because I'll never forget. It was the father that was saying as he was leaving the room with Ethan, like, I love you. And the mom didn't say a word.
No, she didn't.
She didn't like that
Very
kid.
distant. She was not bonded with that child.
Because she knew he was disturbed. So she drank it away. She Xanaxed it away. She rode the horse. She rode the neighbor, whatever. Instead of facing reality, I mean, listen, forget everything I came up here saying. They deserve what they got, if not more. Especially the mother.
No, I agree.
I agree, Jen. I think we do need to bring back an eye for an eye. I've said that for a very long time. They have that prison over here in Philadelphia. It was like one of the first prisons, and it was built to resemble like God. So they had these cells where they had to actually bail, like you had to duck down to get into. They had one light, and it was supposed to be like the light from God, so only like one hole in the wall. And it was built that they weren't allowed to have any communication with any other prisoners, none at all. Even the guards, when they would come down with like their carts of food or whatever, they put stuff around the wheels so they couldn't even hear the carts coming. Every time that the prisoner was about to see a person, they put a thing over their head. It was a torment, It was absolute torment chambers. But at the same time, it housed some of the biggest, worst offenders. And I think that there should be a jail like that for some of the worst offenders ever. And that's how they should be treated. If they can't live amongst us, and listen, again, it's not they say jails to reform people and all that. No, it's not. It's the system meant to keep people in.
I agree with you.
I think they should set up another place like that again, and they should put these, sickos and the worst of the worst in there, and they should never, ever, ever be able to see another person again. If we're going to continue to house them the way we are. Yeah, the Eastern State Penitentiary. It's an amazing history there. Amazing history.
Evelyn lives in Oxford, so she says, I'm too close to be objective. I get it.
She says she was a teacher there.
Oh, yeah. What was really bad, too, was that it came out afterwards, like to add insult to injury, as if there wasn't enough failures. The school superintendent, they fired him. They fired the, like all the administrators or whatever, stepped down. There was a whole fucking rigmarole because they weren't following, how like schools have the Homeland Security guidelines. They have to do like drills for lockdowns and shit like that. They weren't keeping up on their shit. So there was a full out investigation into the whole school district. And I don't even know if they have a permanent superintendent, even as of now, since then. And they all were protected. They didn't have to speak. It was,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was horrible.
They should be held accountable.
Yeah, we watched the school board meetings, and these parents of the victims were there at the school board meetings begging with them to do the right thing. Asking questions. Why didn't you do this? Could never get answers. It was maddening.
Oh, sick.
Chris says, did you see they're extraditing the guy from Nigeria who used sextortion against a guy who ended up killing himself? I'm glad they're making these scammers pay for their crimes. Wow.
Well, it's about time.
But we're going to bring them here and then how?
Right, and then we're going to house them, pay for them.
Right,
You know.
right. It's
The
a
whole damn
double-edged sword.
Shebang again. It's just the whole thing's sickening is what it is. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I think we're taking it too easy on prisoners. Like, all right, if you're like at a local jail for, DUI or whatever, okay, fine. But somebody like Wade Wilson should not have the luxuries that he has. He would have never had them in life. He shouldn't have had them in jail.
I don't know what Flo is saying. Granny, drop your tour link.
Oh, I said I did a day tour of the state penitentiary.
Oh, yeah.
I'll take us all there again. It was a lot of fun.
Put it in
It's
there
really
so we
cool.
can watch it if you have it handy.
I don't, but
Okay.
I will find it.
She'll post it
Yeah,
in her
thank you.
community. Check
It
out
was.
her
It was a lot
community.
of fun. Maybe we'll take another tour there. Honestly, you could feel like the place is fucking haunted, man.
It felt like
Like,
heavy.
Oh my god. Oh my god. And then this one room I went into, I had the biggest like anxiety. Like I could just you could just feel it. Like I'm getting the chills now thinking about it. Like you could just feel something was in the room with you. And don't you know it came out that was like one of the biggest like serial killers' room. And I'm like, holy shit, that's why. Like, you could just sense it.
I want to see that
Oh, it's
too.
so
You should
big.
replay it with us.
Yeah. I'm telling you, the place is really cool.
Do they have like overnight where you can stay overnight?
They do, yeah. I don't think I could ever.
You couldn't? Even if someone was with you?
Yeah, I don't think I could.
Dr. Melmo said, Granny, I want to thank Granny for her mindedness, and willingness to listen, and to everyone in this chat who listened to Granny's point of view. Good job,
Yeah,
everyone.
just erase everything I said because boy was I wrong.
Well, there was a lot of details you didn't know, right?
Yeah. Look, you ever see this prison, Jay? The state penitentiary?
Are you sharing?
Look, check it out really quick.
Yeah.
I know we're gonna wrap it up.
No, it's okay.
So see how it's shaped here? This is like right in the middle of Philadelphia.
Oh,
But
wow.
see
That's where
the
you
shapes
went?
of it?
To this
Yeah.
place?
Yeah. And the way they had it shaped, I mean, it's truly amazing. But the whole thing was based around religion. And it didn't take long for them to shut it down because, well, it wasn't really. It was 1830s.
You should do a live on this. I'd love to hear about this place. This is fascinating shit to me.
Yeah, and they had like one guy that snuck out through like the clothes barrel, but he only got down the street because he went to a bar. There's a lot of history here.
Tons of history. Look how old is that place?
Well, it was 1830s. I think is the
Wow.
last time they used it. But like, here's the barber shop, and then
Wow.
whose cell was here? Al Capone was here,
Really?
and they still have his cell set up the way it was, which was he had like a fancy rug and fancy paintings.
That's
Let me
really
see.
cool.
Al Capone's. Yeah, so I did like a speakeasy there. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, look, here's his actual cell.
No shit.
See how he had like all the
Wow.
fancy furnishings and all?
How did he
Yeah.
get away with that?
It was corrupt.
Wow.
Funny story.
It looks
Yeah.
like a little
And
den.
They kept it exactly that way. It's still this like
That
all
is
of this
wild.
was legit his belongings.
I love that.
And then he ran like the whole block, like the barber shop was just for him.
No
and,
shit. I'd love to hear all
Like-
about this.
and then the way I showed you it was set up like the infirmary and all. So that's what makes it even creepy. Like you can get lost. Again, this is what it looks like from the overtop. I don't know why they made
Wow.
images this way. Drives me nuts. Do you click this? No.
I know. I hate
why
that
you-
too.
Remember, it used to just be a big giant photo.
Uh-huh.
And now they made it this way. But so like the infirmary will be one of these halls, and then oh my god, and then every now and then they'll set up really cool like exhibits. The one exhibit was you start out, have you ever committed a crime? And it'll be like, have you ever rolled a red stop sign? And then if you did, the answer is yes. And then you go down this whole like questionnaire thing to see where you land at the end. It was pretty cool. They do a lot
Look
of
at
like
those
interactive-
hallways. That one right there.
Yeah. This one.
Did you get to walk
So
down
creepy.
did you get to walk
Yeah.
down all these wings?
Yeah, you get to go down. They don't let you on the second wing because it's so unsturdy anymore.
Wow.
But a lot of the
Did it stink?
No, not really. I think because there's a lot of like free air, 'cause so many windows are broken and stuff. But like right here, a lot of the cells still have the old like beds and like drawers and
That's
everything.
fascinating.
It is really like this is literally what many of them look like. And then the doorways are so small because again, they wanted them to like feel like they had to bow down to God to get in.
Wow.
And then I went into this one section where you can
How small are
a
the
guy
doors?
they're really small. See
What
if
do you
they show
mean
them
bow
here.
down to God? How'd they have to do it?
Like because to get into each of these little look how creepy these were.
Ew.
To get into
Was it
the
Catholics or
yeah.
it was Catholic?
Like see like right here how they have the one sunlight coming in.
Yeah.
That's all they were allowed to have, and it was supposed to be like a window to God.
Oh my gosh.
And then to get in to look into like this, the real mattresses, the real toilet and all, to look in, you kind of have to duck. I don't know how else to explain it.
So they were
But then
short. The doors were short.
Yeah, they were short so that they would have to duck into it. And then they had this one, God, what was it? I don't know if it was like a holding cell or what it was, but there are some stairs you can go up. That's right. There was this one, it looked just like the thing I had up here. You could go in there, and a guy that used to be in there would play the piano or sing. He was like a famous singer. It looked just like this. And they have his original like song. And so you push the button and it plays his freaking
Oh,
like
weird.
it's so eerie.
Creepy.
Yeah. A lot of fun though. I would recommend anybody who's in the area to go check this place out.
Yeah, that's wild.
But a lot of
Then they
cool
let you
shit
video
happened
it?
there.
They let you video the whole thing?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. I actually have better like equipment now. 'Cause sometimes my
You should, yeah.
service was a little questionable, but
Yeah, you should go back.
look at the real photo from there.
That's the
It was
prisoners.
insane. Oh no, that's Missouri. Sorry. This is the thing I did. Prisons today, and it tells you like how many. They had this huge thing. It was really cool.
Yeah, that's really
But yeah,
cool. That's interesting. I love that kind of stuff.
the problem was they didn't separate men and women back then. There's like this whole like lesson. So when you go, you basically what they do is they give you a tour guide, and it's an old school like headset player, and the tour guide tells you everything about the prison and all. Well, back then they didn't separate women and men, and they also didn't separate children. And even like yeah, and you would be arrested for being like gay. Just for being gay, you'd be arrested for being homeless. And you would sit there next to like somebody who was in there for murder. So they didn't have it like properly
Right.
segregated or whatever. It was
That's
it
weird
was
to think about men and
yeah.
women in there together.
And children.
So they would like if they got locked up, they just brought their kids with them.
No, like if a kid committed a crime
Oh.
like petty theft or
Fucking weird.
yeah. But like just even the shape of it, dude, is fucking scary.
It's
There's
wild.
a greenhouse, and the greenhouse was like originated and ran by like this one woman who ended up being murdered inside the greenhouse.
Are those houses right around the fence?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It's insane.
Built right
It's
up
like,
to it.
it's the like center of Philadelphia is right there. This isn't it. Oh no, it is. Maybe I never come on this side of it.
Anamosa?
No, that's not state. Yeah, never mind. That's not Phillies. I'm like, that doesn't look right. This is what the outside of it, because they
It
do
looks
a
like
big,
a damn castle.
yeah, they do a big
Look
haunted
at that
thing
one
too, but yeah,
with the lights. Go back. Close that.
this is literally people's houses and
Yeah, that's
businesses
fucking
right there.
wild. Look at the lights on it right
This
there.
one?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, these walls are so high up too.
That
like,
looks really cool.
because when you go there for like the haunted thing they do. But I was more interested in
Who's that guy? Is he like a guard?
Yeah, aren't they creepy?
Yeah.
And you can go in there and they have like in one cell they'll show you like the information of each guard or each prisoner that was housed in that cell. And
Look how bright it was in that hallway. Are those like skylights or is that lights? It looks so bright. Like, is the
I don't
ceiling
know,
like
to
a
be
dome?
honest. It is like a dome, yeah.
Yeah, look how bright it is.
It was open for 180 years. It changed the world. Known for its grand architect and strict discipline, This was the world's first true penitentiary, a prison designed to inspire penitence, or true regret in the hearts of prisoners. It was a architectural wonder. It had running water, central heat before the White House, and attracted visitors from around the globe.
Yeah, that's creepy.
Notable prisoners: Scarface, Al Capone.
The mobsters.
Yeah, the mobs were all there. Look at the old cars in this photo.
I love it.
I do too. It's really, really cool. Skylit cells. See, that's what I mean. Like the only light in notable prisoners. Look at them. Look how they're holding their heads.
We can't see it.
Oh, look how they're holding their heads here.
Oh my gosh.
For the photos, I mean, it was
It's
a
like
torture
a clamp.
chamber. It's a clamp. And then look at the big ass tags on them.
Jesus.
Yeah, there's Al Capone. Killed a state
Victor
trooper.
Babe. Morris the rabbi.
Oh my God. Arsenic murder ring.
Jesus. Call a veteran witch doctor. Yikes.
They appealed to women who were willing to murder their husbands in order to collect the husband's insurance.
Wow.
Between 1932 and 1937, responsible for the deaths of at least 30 people.
Look at this. Go up one. Victor Babe. Look at. He escaped by hiding in a delivery truck that was leaving the prison. They caught him in Chester.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, where he was shot dead. They shot him dead in a Chester, PA diner. Wow.
Chester's like right here next to me. So he got pretty far for, not far enough. There was another guy that also snuck out in a laundry thing, but he only went down the street to have a beer.
Jesus.
Look at this. Assault and battery with intent to kill brought Callahan to Eastern State Penitentiary, and a makeshift wooden ladder brought him out.
Wow. In
In
1923.
1923, 5 other prisoners built a ladder that they used to scale the east wall of the penitentiary.
Wow.
Oh,
he's still
Callahan
at large.
was still at large.
He would be 110 now. They never caught him.
Wow.
Oh, here's the lady.
But I mean,
Frida Frost.
assault and battery with intent to kill. She was transferred to the women's home. 20-year sentence for murder. She had poisoned her husband.
Jesus. These women were brutal back in the day. God almighty.
These guys dug a tunnel that went almost 100 feet.
Slick Willie?
Yeah. He was a famous bank robber. 1945.
50 bank robberies?
Yeah.
3 escapes from prison. He died in 1980. Damn. Slick Willie.
He was captured just minutes later.
With 11 other prisoners.
100 feet tunnel. You know what else was crazy? They showed you like what their, they have what they call the hole.
Yeah.
And they show you what the hole was for them. And when I tell you, it was like the size of a coffin.
Really?
Yeah, it was bad.
Like no light, right?
Hole.
Like dark.
Dark. But that's what this whole jail was based on. It was based on, treating them poorly.
Crazy. Now they have tablets.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, you know what I mean?
It's too cushy, in my opinion. I don't think they should have all that access.
Maybe if we went back to something like this, we'd have less people commit crimes because they're not going to live in luxury.
Right. Unless you're Al Capone.
Well, you can do it. Oh, that's
behind the walls virtual storytelling.
I
like Granny's storytelling better.
Well, I had a lot of fun there. I really, really enjoyed it. It's really cool, fascinating place.
Oh, Global says, I bet wife beating was much worse back then.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and these women were like, fuck you.
Poisoning
their husbands and shit.
Right?
Wild.
I remember doing a whole thing where they played it, and it was basically like if you got caught... what did they call it? They called it something dramatic, but it was basically like if you got caught being gay, they would put you in here.
Wow.
And you sit amongst the worst. If you got caught being, homeless, even being homeless was a crime. But yeah, it's eerie. It's full of history, and I've really
Aw,
enjoyed.
thanks, Robin. A member for 29 months. She said, love you and Granny together.
Oh, that's really sweet.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you for your support.
Well, Jay, I'll let you wrap it up. Thank you for teaching me a thing or two.
Oh, thanks
We'll
for
just-
coming up. It was nice talking it through with you.
Yeah, well, it was enlightening. Maybe next time I should, before I have so much empathy for people, I should get all the facts because they certainly don't deserve any.
Sometimes
His
they don't.
victim.
Yeah. I'm going to play a short video for the victims before we sign
Oh,
off
that's
here.
really nice.
Yeah. That's who it's all about,
All right.
right?
I'll jump
Thanks,
back into
Granny.
the chat so you can wrap it up. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Granny Panties. All right, let's play this video. I couldn't really find a tribute video. I was looking, unfortunately. This is just a news report, but it's what we know about the victims, so it's a way to remember what Ethan took, not only from these parents, but from the community, took their futures. These were all very good kids. These were kids that had really bright futures ahead of them, and I think we need to remember them. Grands. I know, we love Granny. All right, guys, let's take a listen to this.
In this really small, tight-knit community here of Oxford. Now, some families, understandably, were not up to sharing anything at this point, but the father of the youngest victim, Hannah St. Juliana, he directed us to talk to a dear family friend.
Hannah was part of our family. I don't know. We're not real sure how we keep moving through our days right now.
Jennifer Curtis and her family were incredibly close to the family of 14-year-old Hannah St. Juliana. The children were best friends. The families even vacationed together. Hannah's parents wanted Jennifer to be their voice today, their grief unspeakable.
Like many people in our community right now, they're just devastated, and we're all lost with what's happened in our beautiful town.
At 14, Hannah was the youngest person killed in the shooting at Oxford High. 17-year-old Madison Baldwin was also fatally shot. Tate Meir was 16 and had been on Oxford's varsity football team since he was a freshman. And earlier today, 17-year-old Justin Schilling died from his injuries.
Today's the start of the legal process. When we begin to gather and review all of the facts, when we begin to put together a full timeline of events, it will take time. But the victims and their families and the entire community need and deserve those answers. There are some facts we already know.
I don't think any of us really know how to feel right now, and we're not really sure where to put our grief.
I could have found a better video. Let me see if we've got any other ones.
Today marks 3 years since the Oxford High School shooting. The mass shooting from 2021 left 4 students dead: Tate Meir, Hannah St. Juliana, Madison Baldwin, and Justin Schilling. The shooter and his parents were charged in the shooting, but the parents of the victims are now calling for the state to do its own investigation. Last week, the families held a press conference.
See, it's never just about the victims. It's always some bullshit. But do you want to see something cool? We'll end on this. The first home game pays tribute to the victims at Oxford.
Back on the home field for the first season since the Oxford school shooting, the football team kicks off with a special tribute. The Wildcats.
Justin Schilling in Oxford tonight. I'm sure more.
Stadium, and you're never going to find a seat over here because it's at capacity. Yes, by the way, we're in the fourth quarter, and the Wildcats, they're in the lead.
It's tradition before each game, the varsity comes out arm in arm, their family members waiting by the side of the road before they ever hit the field. Tonight, the boys carried 3 flags: the Stars and Stripes, Oxford Schools, and TM 42.
The number 42 for Oxford football has legacy-type undertones where players who are extremely competitive, extremely accomplished, are able to wear that number.
For their beloved friend and forever captain.
I don't think it'll be a return to normal, but this is what people will get a chance to see of our town and our people and our community and our friends and our family.
So much about tonight was familiar and comforting.
Ladies and gentlemen,
but also hard.
Number 42 was reserved for the very best. Tater was the very best.
Mears' extended family was on the sidelines as a video of him played, and they heard his voice again.
Man, it feels awesome. I mean, it feels great. We haven't been to playoffs since my freshman year. No, we weren't even in it my freshman year. My
That's his dad.
Year, so 2018. It just feels great. But in the rain, this is where we live.
And then the entire community honored all 4 students killed that day.
The Oxford community is continuing to recover from this unimaginable events of November 30th. The young lives of Hannah St. Juliana, Madison Baldwin, Justin Schilling, and Tate Meir were tragically taken from us far too soon.
Back here live, they follow.
All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up on that note. It's very sad. All right, guys, thanks for joining. We'll wait to see what the judge's ultimate decision is on those proffers. I have a feeling it's going to be denied, but nonetheless, we will keep our eyes on it. Thank you guys so much for your support today. Thank you, all the new members. I hope you enjoy your membership here at Jays for Justice. Everybody have a great rest of your day. Thanks again to Granny for coming up today. And keep these parents in your thoughts, man. This is a lot. And to see Jennifer back in court, I'm sure that wasn't easy for them. You guys, I'll see you in the next one. Let's run our credits, Myron. So much for watching. If you enjoyed this live stream or video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on my latest content. Want to take it a step further?
Bring it all in.
And join our community clickers by becoming a Patreon or a YouTube member. You'll get exclusive access to our Discord server, special channel perks, and much more. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.
Click, 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 click. It's real easy, man.
I don't give a damn. I don't really care about you and your problems. I don't give a damn. You talk way too much. I have heard enough about you and your problems. I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn. Damn, damn. I don't give a damn. Damn, damn. I don't give a damn. Damn, damn. I don't give a damn. You wanna be with me. You wanna feel something real, but I'm feeling differently. You're making plans to get to friends, but don't wanna face the fact that I ain't got time, I ain't got time, I ain't got time for that. Staying up late, sleeping all day, dreaming about Cadillacs. Buying new shoes, hanging by the pool, sipping on Coke and Jack. Calling my phone when you feel alone, but I'll never call you back. 'Cause I ain't got time, I ain't got time, I ain't got time for that.